What do you do when your family expects you to sacrifice your happiness for theirs? Clara, fresh out of college, thought she had her future figured out, but moving back in with her parents wasn't part of the plan. It seemed like a temporary situation until her sister Brittany's family moved in and everything changed. Clara's life turned into an endless cycle of paying bills, babysitting, and being the afterthought. The tipping point came when Clara realized she wasn't just overlooked, she was taken for granted. But this time, she was done. Stay tuned to see how Clara takes control of her life, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Fresh out of college with my business degree, I found myself back in my childhood home. I'm Clara, 22 years old, and honestly, I hadn't planned on moving back in with my parents. But here I was. The job hunt didn't take long, thankfully. Within a week, I landed a position at Davidson Marketing with a decent salary and promising performance bonuses. That evening, over Mom's meatloaf, I shared my good news. I figured I'd stay here for about 3 months, save up some money, and then get my own apartment. The clinking of forks against plates stopped abruptly. Mom and Dad exchanged one of those looks, the kind that always meant trouble. Moving out? Mom set down her fork. Clara, you know I can only work part-time at the library because of my back problems. Dad cleared his throat. And things aren't great at the plant. There have been rumors of layoffs. We could really use your help with the bills. Mom added softly. And you wouldn't have to pay rent here. It just makes more sense, doesn't it? I stared at my half-eaten meatloaf, feeling trapped. They had a point, sort of, and they were my parents after all. I guess I could stay longer. Life fell into a rhythm after that. I went to work, came home, paid the bills, and Mom made sure dinner was always on the table. It seemed okay manageable, even until last weekend when my sister Brittany showed up with her husband Kevin and their kids, Olivia and Noah. The change in my parents was instant, as if someone had flipped a switch. "Oh, my precious angels," Mom cooed, scooping up 4-year-old Olivia while Dad swung Noah onto his shoulders. "Brittany, darling, you look wonderful. How's everything going? Tell us all about what you've been up to." I stood in the doorway watching as my parents fawned over their eldest daughter and her perfect little family. The way they hung on her every word, asking for details about the most mundane things. How her garden was doing, what new words Noah had learned, how her book club was going. They'd never shown that kind of interest in my life, not even when I made the dean's list or won the business school's leadership award. "Clara, be a dear and put on some coffee," Mom called over her shoulder, not even looking my way as she bounced Noah on her knee. Standing in the kitchen that day, listening to my family's laughter from the living room, I couldn't help but think back to how things had always been this way. Brittany, 7 years my senior, had always been the star of our family show, while I was relegated to the role of supporting cast. I remember sitting at that same kitchen table when I was 11, showing Mom my straight A report card. She barely glanced at it before turning back to Brittany, talking about college applications. "That's nice, Clara," she said absent-mindedly, waving me off. "Brittany, honey, which universities are your top choices?" Those years were all about Brittany's high school achievements. Every dinner conversation revolved around her grades, her extracurriculars, her college prep. I'd sit there quietly, eating my peas while Mom and Dad hung on every word Brittany spoke about her AP classes and college tours. Everything changed even more dramatically when Brittany got accepted to university. I was 11 at the time, and I still remember that dinner conversation like it was yesterday. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom had exclaimed, tears in her eyes. "We'll make it work, won't we, Robert?" Dad nodded solemnly. "We'll take out a student loan. Our Brittany deserves the best education possible." A week after Brittany left for college, they sat me down for a different kind of talk. "Clara," Dad said, his voice serious, "we need to tighten our belts for a while. The loan payments and Brittany's college expenses are significant." That's when things really changed. While my classmates got new phones every year, I kept my old flip phone until it literally fell apart. When I needed new clothes, we went to thrift stores. Christmas gifts became practical items like socks and school supplies. But they never forgot to send Brittany money. "Your sister needs to focus on her studies," Mom would say as she wrote another check. "We can't let her feel stressed about money." I learned my lesson early, At 15, I joined every club and academic competition I could find. I stayed up late studying, not just for good grades, but for perfect ones. I wrote essays for scholarship competitions until my hands cramped because I knew that there would be no student loans for me. I got a full scholarship to State University, and I still remember the look of relief on my parents' faces when I told them they wouldn't have to spend a dime on my education. Meanwhile, Brittany graduated, got a job in Brighton, and quickly married Kevin, her college sweetheart. Within 2 years, she had Olivia, and Noah followed shortly after. My parents were over the moon. Their perfect daughter had created a perfect family. Now every monthly visit turned into the same routine. Brittany and Kevin would show up with the kids, and before I could even say hello properly, Brittany would be planning her weekend. "Clara, you'll watch Olivia and Noah while we go shopping, right?" she'd say, not really asking. "Kevin and I hardly get any alone time these days." The first few times, I tried to suggest that our parents could watch them instead. "Oh, honey," Mom would say, rubbing her back. "You know it's hard for me to keep up with young children. And your father needs his rest on weekends." So here I was, spending yet another Saturday watching Frozen for the 100th time with Olivia while Noah tried to color on my bedroom walls. Brittany and Kevin were off having lunch with friends, and our parents were puttering around in the garden, occasionally peeking in to ask if I needed anything, as if they were doing me a favor. I tried to console myself with the thought that it was only one weekend a month, just one weekend of being the reliable babysitter while everyone else lived their lives, free from the responsibilities that seemed to pile up on me. A year passed, and the cycle of babysitting and paying bills became almost routine. Almost. Then came the phone call that would flip my life completely upside down. I was doing dishes after dinner when I heard my mom's phone ring from the kitchen. I could hear her surprise, her voice rising. "Brittany, oh, sweetheart, don't cry. Tell me what happened." Through the sobs, Brittany explained that Kevin's company had gone bankrupt without warning. They couldn't afford their rent anymore and had no savings. Could we maybe stay with you for a while?" Brittany's voice was loud through the phone, almost piercing the air. "Of course you can," Mom exclaimed without hesitation. "We'll make room." My stomach dropped. I stepped forward, my voice catching in my throat. If they're moving in, maybe this would be a good time for me to get my own apartment?" Mom's expression froze, like I'd just suggested burning the house down. "Clara, don't be ridiculous. There's plenty of room for everyone." Dad added firmly, "But we're family. We stick together during hard times." They arrived the following weekend with 3 packed cars. I spent the entire Saturday morning hauling my things into what had been our storage room, the smallest bedroom in the house, barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser. My old room, twice the size, became the kids' nursery because the children need space to play. Olivia, now 5, and Noah, 3, treated the entire house like their personal playground. They ran up and down the hallways, shrieking with laughter, while Brittany sat in front of the TV, cranked up to full volume, or had long, loud phone calls with her friends about how hard this transition was for her. "Olivia, Noah, keep it down!" I'd call out as they burst into my room for the 10th time, scattering my work papers everywhere. "They're just playing, Clara," Brittany would say dismissively, never even glancing up from her phone. "Don't be such a grouch." See, after work, all I wanted was to relax in my room, maybe read a book or watch something on my laptop. Instead, I was treated to the relentless loop of Baby Shark blasting through the walls, punctuated by the constant thumping of little feet running back and forth, and Brittany's loud laughter at whatever show she was watching downstairs. Kevin spent his days job hunting, but mostly I saw him sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone with a worried expression. "The job market's tough right now," he'd say whenever anyone asked, "but I'm sure something will come up soon." At night, I lay in my tiny bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the chaos that had taken over my home. I wondered how I had let myself get trapped in this situation, but every time I thought about bringing up moving out again, I remembered my parents' dismissive reaction and kept quiet. The first utility bill after Brittany's family moved in hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the numbers that were almost double what I usually paid. The water bill alone had skyrocketed, not to mention electricity and heating. I glanced at my bank account and realized that my dream of saving for my own place was slipping further away by the day. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I decided to bring it up. "So, about the utility bills," I started, pushing my peas around my plate, trying to avoid eye contact. "They've doubled since last month. I can't keep covering all the bills by myself anymore. It's taking almost my entire salary." Brittany's fork clattered against her plate. "Are you seriously complaining about money right now when Kevin and I have lost everything?" "I'm not complaining. I just think we need to figure out a fair way to—" "I can't believe how selfish you're being." Brittany's voice rose. "We're going through the hardest time of our lives and all you care about is money." "Brittany's right, Clara," Mom jumped in. "Family helps family. That's what we do." Dad nodded solemnly. "Your sister and Kevin need our support right now. This isn't the time to be counting pennies." I looked down at my plate, swallowing the words I really wanted to say. Fine, never mind. A week later, Kevin finally got a job at an insurance company. It paid less than his previous position, but at least it was something. I thought maybe things would start getting better. I was wrong. "It's so hard being alone with the kids all day," Brittany started complaining almost immediately. "Kevin leaves at 8 and doesn't get back until 6. I never get a break." Then it started small requests at first. "Clara, could you watch the kids for an hour while I run to the store?" "Clara, would you mind keeping an eye on them while I take a shower?" Before I knew it, these small favors had snowballed into something much bigger. I'd come home from work to find Brittany already dressed up to go out. "Oh, good, you're home," she'd say, grabbing her purse. "Kevin and I are meeting friends for dinner. Olivia and Noah already had their snack, but they'll need dinner in an hour. We'll be back by 10. Weekends became my personal nightmare. Every Friday evening, Brittany and Kevin would casually announce their plans: another shopping trip, lunch with friends, a movie date, leaving me alone with the kids for hours. And just when I thought things might be manageable, Mom and Dad would conveniently start visiting relatives more often, slipping out right after Brittany and Kevin left. So there I was, weekend after weekend, desperately trying to keep Olivia from drawing on the walls while Noah threw another tantrum because I'd cut his sandwich the wrong way. Saturdays were spent cleaning up toys, making mac and cheese, and enduring endless repeats of children's movies. By Sunday night, I was completely drained. My house was a mess, and I still had to cook dinner for everyone. It became routine, suffocating. I was the unpaid babysitter, the invisible helper. One evening, after a particularly grueling weekend, I finally gathered enough courage to speak up at dinner. "I need to talk to you all," I said, setting my fork down, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm really tired. This situation with the childcare isn't working for me." Brittany's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean, isn't working?" she demanded. "Are you saying you don't want to spend time with your own nephews?" Before I could answer, Mom reached across the table, patting Brittany's hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, honey. This is actually good practice for Clara. She'll need to know how to handle children when she becomes a mother someday. Think of it as training." And just like that, the conversation shifted. Brittany went back to discussing her day, Mom and Dad hanging on her every word, Kevin nodding along as usual. I sat there, invisible once again, pushing food around my plate. Nothing changed after that. If anything, it got worse. Brittany and Kevin seemed to take my complaint as a challenge. They found even more reasons to go out, always waiting by the door when I came home from work, car keys in hand. "We're meeting friends at that new restaurant downtown," they'd say, already halfway out. "Kids have had their snack, thanks, Clara." Weekends became something I dreaded. I'd wake up on Saturday mornings with a knot in my stomach, knowing I'd spend the next 2 days glued to Paw Patrol, mediating sibling fights, while Brittany and Kevin lived their best lives. Then came a Wednesday that changed everything. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a marketing report despite my exhaustion, when my friend Jessica stopped by my cubicle. "Hey, want to do something fun this weekend?" she asked, perching on the edge of my desk. "A bunch of us are going to the Pine Ridge Ski Resort, just a quick weekend getaway. Leave Saturday morning, come back Sunday night. The slopes are supposed to be perfect right now." For the first time in months, I felt a spark of excitement. That weekend, I was in my tiny bedroom packing my duffel bag, genuinely looking forward to time away from the chaos. I folded my warmest sweater, my heart light with anticipation. Then, out of nowhere, Brittany appeared in my doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, eyeing my half-packed bag. "Packing for a ski trip," I replied, rolling up my thermal socks. "Going to Pine Ridge with some friends from work." Brittany's face darkened. "You need to cancel." I looked up, startled by her tone. "What? Why would I do that?" "Because," she said, crossing her arms, "Kevin and I are going to Aunt Linda's 60th birthday party in Millbrook this weekend. Mom and Dad are coming too. You need to stay here with Olivia and Noah." I couldn't help but laugh, actually laugh out loud at the sheer audacity of it all. "You're joking, right?" I said, continuing to fold my ski pants. "You can't seriously expect me to cancel my plans because you didn't bother to tell me about yours?" Brittany's face turned red. "This isn't funny, Clara. You're being completely unreasonable. No, what's unreasonable is assuming I'll drop everything at a moment's notice to be your personal babysitter again." Brittany's mouth fell open. She stood there for a moment, sputtering before turning on her heel and storming out of my room. "Mom! Dad! Kevin!" I could hear her shouting down the hallway. "You won't believe what Clara is doing." I kept packing, my hands shaking slightly with anger. The thundering of footsteps announced the arrival of the cavalry. My tiny room suddenly felt even smaller as Brittany, Kevin, and my parents crowded in. Mom's face was already set in that disappointed expression I knew so well. "What's this about you going skiing?" she demanded, hands on her hips. "Exactly what it sounds like," I replied, zipping up my duffel bag. "I'm going to Pine Ridge Resort with my friends for the weekend." "But you can't!" Brittany exclaimed. "We have Aunt Linda's party." "No, you have Aunt Linda's party," I corrected her. I stopped what I was doing and turned to face them all. Why am I just hearing about this party now? Why wasn't I included in any of the planning? Mom hesitated, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Brittany jumped in, her voice dripping with condescension. "We all discussed it and decided this would work best for everyone. We go to the party, you watch the kids. It's the most logical arrangement." "You all discussed it," I repeated slowly, "without me, and decided what I would be doing with my weekend? How convenient." "Well, you can't exactly bring small children to a sophisticated party," Brittany sniffed. "Aunt Linda specifically said no kids." I shouldered my duffel bag. "Sounds like a you problem. They're your kids, Brittany. Figure it out." "What's that supposed to mean?" Kevin finally spoke up, frowning. "It means exactly what it sounds like. I have plans. I'm going skiing. Your children are your responsibility, not mine. If you can't bring them to the party, either don't go or hire a babysitter." "A babysitter?" Brittany screeched. "With what money?" "Again, not my problem." I turned to face them all, suddenly feeling stronger than I had in months, maybe years. "Let me make this perfectly clear. I am going skiing tomorrow. I am done being your free, convenient babysitter. I'm done having my weekends hijacked, my plans ignored, and my life treated like it doesn't matter. If you need childcare, Brittany, that's your responsibility as a parent. Stop assuming I'll always be there to pick up your slack." The silence that followed was deafening. They all stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Brittany's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Dad seemed to be trying to disappear into the doorframe. And Kevin, well, Kevin just stood there with that same confused expression he'd been wearing since his company went bankrupt. The moment of shocked silence didn't last long. Brittany's face crumpled, and she burst into theatrical sobs, covering her face with her hands. Kevin muttered something that sounded distinctly like ungrateful under his breath. "How dare you!" Mom's voice rose. "After everything we've done for you, you're being completely irresponsible." "Selfish," Dad chimed in, shaking his head. "Absolutely selfish." I stood there, my duffel bag still over my shoulder, watching my family turn into a Greek chorus of accusations. The words washed over me. Selfish, ungrateful, inconsiderate, immature. Each one meant to cut deep, to put me back in my place. Then, Mom delivered what she clearly thought would be the knockout blow. "If you walk out that door tomorrow, don't bother coming back to this house." To everyone's surprise, I burst out laughing. Not a nervous giggle, but a full, genuine laugh. They all stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. "You know what's funny?" I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "I've been dreaming about moving out of this house for months. I just didn't have the courage to do it. But here you are, giving me the perfect excuse. So thank you, Mom." "Get out!" Brittany shrieked, her fake sobs forgotten in her rage. "Just get out!" "Gladly." I pulled out my phone and dialed Jessica's number, putting it on speaker just to make a point. "Hey, Ratch, sorry to call so late, but is that offer to crash at your place still good? Not just for after skiing, but maybe for a few days?" "Of course!" Jessica's cheerful voice filled the room. "I have a spare room. Want to come over now?" "That would be perfect. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I spent the next 15 minutes gathering everything I could fit in my car. Clothes, important documents, personal items. They watched from various doorways as I made trips up and down the stairs, as if they couldn't quite believe I was really doing it. When I had loaded the last box, I walked into the living room where they had all gathered. "Oh, one more thing," I said, my voice steady. "Since I won't be living here anymore, I won't be paying any of the bills either. You'll need to figure out how to support yourselves." Mom's face went pale. But the utilities, the groceries?" "Not my problem anymore," I said, echoing my words from earlier. I turned and walked out the front door, ignoring Mom's suddenly panicked calls behind me. The drive to Jessica's place was a blur of adrenaline and relief. My phone lit up with calls and messages, angry texts from Brittany, guilt-laden novels from Mom, stern disappointments from Dad. I ignored them all, letting the weight of their demands slide off my shoulders. The next morning, Jessica and I drove to Pine Ridge Resort as planned. For the first time in what felt like forever, I did exactly what I wanted. We skied, we laughed, we sat by the fire sipping hot chocolate. Not once did I have to worry about anyone else's children or problems. When we got back Sunday night, I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments. With my salary no longer going to support my family, I could finally afford something decent. By Wednesday, I found a small but bright one-bedroom apartment in a great area, just a 15-minute drive from my office. It felt like a victory, like a breath of fresh air I hadn't realized I'd been holding for so long. My first week in the new apartment felt like I was learning to breathe again. Every morning, I woke up to blessed silence. No screaming children. No blaring TV. No guilt-ridden sighs from my mother. I could make coffee and drink it while it was still hot. I could spend my evenings reading or watching whatever I wanted on Netflix, but the messages kept coming. I didn't answer the calls, but I couldn't help but read the texts. They followed the same predictable pattern. "Mom, how could you abandon your family like this? We need you." Brittany, "You're so selfish. The kids keep asking where Aunt Clara is." Dad, "Your mother is very upset. You need to make this right." "Go." They were all variations of guilt trips and anger, accusations mixed with pleas. I read them all but responded to none. My silence seemed to send them into a frenzy. They weren't used to not having power over me. After a week of this, I sat on my new couch when Mom's number flashed on my phone again. This time, I decided to answer. "Clara! Finally!" Mom's voice was sharp, full of accusation. "I can't believe you ruined our entire weekend. Aunt Linda's party was completely disrupted because of your selfish behavior. Brittany and Kevin couldn't come because you refused to watch the children." I took a deep breath, my voice quiet but firm. "Stop. Just stop. I'm done with this, Mom. I'm done being treated like a servant in my own home. I'm done being expected to sacrifice everything, my time, my money, my life, just for everyone else's convenience. I'm done being the family ATM and free babysitter while being treated like I don't even matter." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Mom finally spoke again, her voice had shifted to that familiar, wheedling tone I knew so well. "Honey, I know things haven't been perfect, but we're family. We need you. The bills this month. We're struggling without your help." I exhaled slowly, my resolve hardening. "No, Mom, I'm done. Mom, maybe someday we can have a relationship again, but it will be on equal terms. No more manipulation. No more guilt trips. No more treating me like a walking wallet or a free childcare service. Until then, I need space to live my own life." Without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone and immediately blocked her number. Then I went through my contacts and blocked them all. Mom, Dad, Brittany, even Kevin. I blocked them on social media too. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once, like cutting the anchor lines that had been holding me down for years without even realizing it. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have my family back in my life. Maybe with enough time and distance, we can rebuild something new, something healthier, with boundaries and respect. Or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm done sacrificing my own happiness and well-being to meet their endless demands. What do you do when you realize that the family you've always tried to please never saw you for who you really are? When you've spent your life being the dependable one, the one who picks up the slack, and they still treat you like an afterthought? Clara spent years catering to her family's needs, from babysitting her sister's kids to covering bills at home. Despite all her sacrifices, she was never truly seen or appreciated. Instead, she was expected to be the one who always gave, who always did more. But when Clara finally stood up for herself, when she stopped letting them dictate her life, everything changed. The turning point came when Clara decided to stop being the family's emotional and financial support system. She stopped putting their needs before her own and took back control of her life. The backlash was swift, with accusations and guilt trips coming her way, but Clara didn't flinch. She set boundaries and made it clear that her happiness wasn't negotiable. Now, Clara is free. She's living her life on her own terms, no longer weighed down by guilt or obligation. The road hasn't been easy, but she's learning that family doesn't have the right to drain your energy and steal your joy. So, what about you? Have you ever felt like you were taken for granted by your own family? Would you have had the courage to do what Clara did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're inspired by her story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
I glanced at my phone, frowning at the caller ID. Patricia. My mother-in-law rarely called, especially not at this hour. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Patricia. Is everything all right? Alexis, dear, I'm sorry to bother you, but have you noticed anything strange about Bill lately? I paused, caught off guard. Strange? What do you mean? Oh, I don't know. He's been so distant lately, barely returns my calls, and when he does, he seems distracted. I walked to the kitchen window, peering out at our manicured lawn. The sprinklers kicked on, misting the air. I haven't noticed anything unusual. He's been working late, but that's normal this time of year. Patricia sighed heavily. I suppose. It's just, a mother knows when something's off with her child. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, more to reassure myself than her. But I'll keep an eye out. Is there anything specific you're worried about? There was a long pause on the other end. Well, it's probably nothing, but I overheard him on the phone the other day. He was speaking in hushed tones, and when I came into the room, he hung up abruptly. My stomach tightened. Who was he talking to? He said it was work, but Alexis. I think it was Clara. I nearly dropped the phone. Clara? His cousin Clara? Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but I swear I heard him say her name. My mind raced. Bill and Clara had always been close, but they'd drifted apart after our wedding. Why would he be calling her in secret? Patricia, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Maybe they're planning a surprise for you? She laughed bitterly. At my age? Doubtful. No, something's not right. I can feel it in my bones. Just then, I heard the garage door opening. Patricia, Bill's home. I should go. Try not to worry, okay? I'll talk to him. I hung up and busied myself at the kitchen counter, trying to calm my racing heart. Bill walked in, loosening his tie. Hey, honey. How was your day? I asked, keeping my voice light. He shrugged, heading for the fridge. Same old. Yours? Fine. Oh, your mom called. Bill stiffened almost imperceptibly. Yeah? What'd she want? I studied his face carefully. She's worried about you. Says you've been distant lately. He rolled his eyes. Mom's always worried about something. I've just been busy with work. She mentioned overhearing you on the phone, thought she heard you talking to Clara. Bill's jaw clenched. That's ridiculous. I haven't spoken to Clara in years. Are you sure? Because your mom seemed pretty certain. He slammed the fridge door shut. Jesus, Alexis. What is this, an interrogation? My mother's paranoid, and now you're buying into it? I took a step back, startled by his outburst. I'm just telling you what she said, no need to get defensive. Bill ran a hand through his hair, sighing. I'm sorry, I'm just stressed from work. Look, I've got a big presentation tomorrow. I need to go over some notes. He brushed past me, heading for his office. I watched him go, a knot forming in my stomach. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Later that night, I lay awake, Bill's steady breathing beside me. Patricia's words echoed in my mind. A mother knows when something's off with her child. I turned to look at my husband's sleeping face. Did I know him as well as I thought I did? Or was there a side to Bill I'd never seen? As sleep finally claimed me, one thought lingered. I had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The next morning, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. Bill had left early for his presentation, barely saying goodbye. I found myself staring at the phone, debating whether to call Patricia. Finally, I dialed her number. Alexis, is everything all right? Patricia's voice was laced with concern. I'm not sure, I admitted. Can we meet for coffee? There's a lot I need to ask you. An hour later, I sat across from Patricia at our local cafe, watching her stir her latte absently. She looked tired, worry lines etched deeply around her eyes. Tell me everything, I said softly. About Bill, about Clara. I need to know what's going on. Patricia sighed heavily. It started about 6 months ago. Bill began calling less, making excuses not to visit. When he did come over, he was distracted, always checking his phone. My heart sank. 6 months. How had I not noticed? And Clara? I prompted. Patricia's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of sadness and anger. I overheard him on the phone with her 3 times now, always speaking in hushed tones, always hanging up when I entered the room. What were they talking about? I couldn't make out much, but... Patricia hesitated. One time I heard him say, I miss you too. We'll figure something out. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped my coffee cup tightly, trying to steady myself. There's more, Patricia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Last month I saw Clara at the grocery store. She was different, glowing almost. And Alexa, she was wearing a necklace I recognized. It was my grandmother's pendant, the one I gave to Bill on his 18th birthday. I felt the blood drain from my face. Are you sure? Patricia nodded grimly. Positive. I confronted Bill about it later, but he brushed it off, said he must have misplaced it years ago. My mind was reeling. The late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the sudden distance between us. It all started to make a horrifying kind of sense. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to believe it myself. I hoped I was imagining things, that if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't be real. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I understand, but Patricia, we need to know for sure. We can't just sit back and let this happen. She nodded, a spark of determination lighting her eyes. What do you want to do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm going to dig deeper, check his emails, his phone records, anything I can find. If there's proof, we'll find it. And if there is, Patricia asked, her voice trembling. I met her gaze, feeling a surge of anger and resolve. Then we make them pay, both of them. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed. A text from Bill. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I showed it to Patricia, who shook her head in disgust. He's with her right now, isn't he? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Probably, I managed to choke out. Patricia pulled me into a fierce hug. We'll get through this, Alexis. Together. As I watched her drive away, I felt a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, betrayal, fear, but also a grim determination. Bill and Clara thought they could fool us, destroy our family without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I climbed into my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. It was time to hunt for the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. And when I found it, there would be hell to pay. I paced the living room, rehearsing what I'd say to Bill when he got home. The clock ticked past midnight, each second fueling my anger. Finally, I heard his key in the lock. Hey, Bill said, looking surprised to see me awake. I thought you'd be in bed. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He sighed, loosening his tie. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. No, it can't. I crossed my arms. What's going on with you and Clara? Bill froze, his face a mask of shock before he quickly composed himself. Clara, what are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Bill. Your mother heard you on the phone with her, multiple times. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Mom's imagining things. You know how she gets. Is she? I pressed. Because she saw Clara wearing your grandmother's pendant, the one you said you lost. Bill's face darkened. Has my mother been filling your head with these ridiculous stories? Alexis, come on. You know me better than that. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to, but the doubt had taken root, and I couldn't shake it. Then explain the late nights, the secretive phone calls. Explain why you've been so distant lately. I told you, work has been crazy. These accusations are insane. Clara's my cousin, for Christ's sake. His anger seemed genuine, but something still felt off. I decided to push harder. Prove it, I said. Show me your phone. Let me see your call history, your texts. Bill's eyes widened. What? No, that's a complete invasion of privacy. I can't believe you don't trust me. If you have nothing to hide, what's the problem? He threw up his hands. The problem is my wife acting like a paranoid lunatic. Listen to yourself, Alexis. This isn't you. Tears stung my eyes. You're right. This isn't me, but I don't feel like I know you anymore either. Bill's expression softened. He stepped closer, reaching for me. Honey, I love you. Only you. Whatever your mother-in-law thinks she heard or saw, she's wrong. I would never cheat on you, especially not with Clara. I wanted to fall into his arms to believe every word, but the seed of doubt had grown into a thorny vine, wrapping around my heart. I need some time, I said, stepping back. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. Hurt flashed across Bill's face, quickly replaced by anger. Fine, if that's what you want, but this conversation isn't over. He stormed off, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. What if I was wrong? What if Patricia's suspicions were just the paranoid imaginings of a lonely old woman? But then I remembered the look on Bill's face when I mentioned Clara. The way he refused to show me his phone, the months of distance between us. No. Something wasn't right, and I was going to find out what. I crept upstairs, pausing outside the guest room. I could hear Bill's muffled voice through the door. He was on the phone. I know, it's complicated. No, she doesn't know anything for sure. We just need to be more careful. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he'd hear it. I pressed my ear closer to the door. I'll figure something out, I promise. I love you too. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, barely making it to our bedroom before collapsing on the bed. It was true. All of it. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, I made a decision. No more confrontations. No more asking for the truth. It was time to take matters into my own hands. If Bill wouldn't give me answers, I'd find them myself. Let the hunt begin. The next morning, I waited until Bill left for work before springing into action. My hands shook as I booted up his laptop, grateful he'd never changed the password I'd set up years ago. This felt wrong, invasive, but I needed answers. I started with his email, scanning through countless work messages and junk mail. Nothing suspicious. Then I noticed a folder labeled Personal Projects. My heart raced as I clicked it open. There, buried among innocuous files, was an email thread with Clara. I took a deep breath and began to read. Bill, we can't keep doing this. It's not fair to Alexis or the kids. I know, but I can't imagine my life without you. We'll figure something out, I promise. Maybe we should tell them the truth. It's been months. My vision blurred with tears. Months. They'd been carrying on this affair for months, right under my nose. I kept scrolling, each message twisting the knife deeper. Plans for secret rendezvous, declarations of love, discussions about their future together. It was all there, in black and white. Then I saw it. An email from last week with an attachment. I clicked it open, my breath catching in my throat. It was a receipt for a diamond ring. The room spun around me. Bill was planning to leave me, to start a new life with Clara. How could I have been so blind? I printed out the emails, my hands moving on autopilot. Then I deleted the folder and cleared the browser history. Bill couldn't know I'd seen this, not yet. I called Patricia, my voice barely above a whisper. You were right. About everything. Oh, Alexis, she sighed. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I stared at the stack of damning emails on the desk. I don't know, but I can't confront him yet. I need time to think. Of course, dear. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. As I hung up, a notification pinged on my phone, a text from Bill. Working late again, don't wait up. Rage boiled inside me. No more lies, no more secrets. It was time to see this affair with my own eyes. I called our neighbor asking her to watch the kids for a few hours. Then I got in my car and drove to Bill's office. His car wasn't in the parking lot. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I tried to decide what to do next. Where would they meet? A hotel? Clara's place? Then I remembered something from the emails, a mention of a special spot by the lake. It was worth a shot. I drove to the secluded area, my heart pounding. As I rounded a bend, I saw them. Bill's car, parked next to another I didn't recognize. I killed the engine and crept closer, staying hidden behind the trees. And there they were, standing by the water's edge. Bill and Clara, locked in an embrace. I wanted to scream, to run out and confront them, but something held me back. This was the proof I needed, but it wasn't enough. Not for what I had planned. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, my hands surprisingly steady. Then I retreated to my car, unseen. As I drove home, a cold determination settled over me. No more tears, no more doubts. Bill and Clara thought they could destroy our family and get away with it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I pulled into our driveway, my mind racing with possibilities. It wasn't enough to just confront them. No, they needed to feel the full weight of their betrayal, to experience the same public humiliation they'd subjected me to. I smiled grimly as a plan began to take shape. Patricia had mentioned a family reunion coming up. What better place for a grand revelation? It was time to start planning my revenge. And when I was done, Bill and Clara would regret ever crossing me. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing with the images of Bill and Clara by the lake. As dawn broke, I found myself back at Bill's laptop, driven by a desperate need to understand the full extent of their betrayal. This time, I dug deeper, searching through hidden folders and archived messages. What I found shattered any remaining hope I had of salvaging our marriage. There, in a password-protected file, was a detailed plan for their future together. Bank statements showing large transfers to a joint account, property listings for houses in another state, and most devastating of all, a draft of divorce papers with my name on them. My hands shook as I read through their exchanges, each word a dagger to my heart. I can't wait to start our new life together, away from all this, Clara had written. Bill's response made me physically ill. Soon, my love. Once everything's in place, we'll tell Alexis and be free. Free, as if I was some kind of prison he needed to escape from. I printed everything, adding it to the growing pile of evidence. As I stared at the stack of papers, something inside me snapped. The hurt and betrayal crystallized into a cold, hard rage. I picked up my phone and dialed Patricia's number. Alexis? What's wrong? Her voice was thick with sleep. I need to see you, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my tone. Now. An hour later, we sat at Patricia's kitchen table, the evidence spread out before us. I watched as she read through it all, her face growing paler with each page. My God, she whispered, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. Alexis, I'm so sorry. I never imagined it was this bad. I nodded, my jaw clenched. They were planning to leave, to start a new life together and leave us all behind. Patricia reached out, clasping my hand. What do you want to do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I want them to pay. Not just Bill and Clara, but everyone who knew and kept quiet. They all betrayed us, Patricia. They made fools of us. She nodded slowly, a fierce light coming into her eyes. The family reunion. It's in 2 weeks. Everyone will be there. A grim smile spread across my face. Perfect. We'll expose them in front of everyone they've lied to. Let them feel the humiliation they've put us through. Patricia squeezed my hand. Are you sure about this, Alexis? Once we do this, there's no going back. I met her gaze, my resolve hardening. I'm sure. They don't get to just walk away from this. They need to face the consequences of their actions. We spent the next hour plotting, our heads bent together over the kitchen table. As the plan took shape, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction growing inside me. Just as we were finishing up, my phone buzzed. A text from Bill. Hey, honey, running late again. Don't wait up. I showed it to Patricia, who shook her head in disgust. The nerve of him. I stood up, gathering the evidence. I should get back. I need to act normal until the reunion. Patricia walked me to the door, pulling me into a tight hug. Stay strong, Alexis. We'll get through this together. As I drove home, my mind was clear for the first time in weeks. The path ahead was set. In 2 weeks, Bill and Clara's perfect little world would come crashing down around them. I pulled into our driveway, noting Bill's car was still gone. Probably still with her, I thought bitterly. But as I walked into our house, the home we'd built together, filled with memories now tainted, I made a solemn vow. This would be the last night I spent under the same roof as a liar and a cheat. The last night I played the role of the oblivious, devoted wife. In 2 weeks, everything would change, and I would emerge from the ashes of this betrayal stronger than ever. Let the countdown begin. The 2 weeks leading up to the family reunion were the longest of my life. Every moment felt like walking on eggshells, pretending everything was normal while rage simmered just beneath the surface. Bill, oblivious to my knowledge, continued his charade of late nights and work emergencies. Patricia and I spoke daily, fine-tuning our plan. We decided to make a presentation at the reunion, ostensibly to celebrate Bill's recent promotion. In reality, it would be the stage for his downfall. The night before the reunion, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Bill's steady breathing beside me made my skin crawl. How many times had he lied to my face, then crawled into this bed we shared? Morning came, and with it a surge of nervous energy. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel powerful. As I applied my makeup, I caught Bill's appreciative glance in the mirror. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing my cheek. "Ready for the big day?" I forced a smile. "More than you know." The drive to Patricia's sprawling estate was tense. Bill chatted about work, about how excited he was to see everyone. I nodded at the right moments, my mind focused on the USB drive and my purse containing all the evidence. As we pulled up, I saw Clara's car already parked in the driveway. My stomach clenched. "Look who beat us here," Bill said, a little too casually. I bit back a bitter laugh. What a surprise. The reunion was in full swing when we arrived. Family members I hadn't seen in years greeted us warmly. I watched as Bill and Clara carefully avoided each other, stealing glances when they thought no one was looking. Patricia found me by the punch bowl, her eyes questioning. I nodded slightly. It was time. She clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "We're here to celebrate Bill's recent success at work. Alexis and I have prepared a little presentation. Bill, Clara, why don't you come up front?" I saw a flicker of panic cross Bill's face, quickly masked. Clara looked confused but moved to join him. My hands shook as I connected the USB to the large TV in Patricia's living room. The familiar desktop appeared, and I opened the folder labeled Bill's Achievements. "As you all know," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "Bill has always been dedicated to his work. But recently I discovered just how creative he's been." I clicked on the first file. An email from Bill to Clara appeared on the screen, full of passionate declarations of love. The room fell silent. "What is this?" Bill demanded, his face pale. I ignored him, clicking through more emails, bank statements, property listings. With each revelation, gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Alexis, stop this right now," Bill hissed, reaching for the remote. I jerked away from him. "No, Bill. I'm done stopping. I'm done pretending." I turned to face the stunned family members. For months, Bill and Clara have been carrying on an affair. They've been planning to leave us all behind and start a new life together. Clara let out a choked sob. "Bill, you said you'd handle this." The room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, people took sides. Through it all, I stood firm, Patricia at my side. Bill's face contorted with rage. He lunged for me, but Patricia stepped between us. "Don't you dare touch her," she spat. "You're no son of mine." As security escorted Bill and Clara out, I felt a strange mix of vindication and emptiness. The truth was out, but at what cost? Patricia squeezed my hand. "It's done," she whispered. I nodded, watching as my marriage, my life as I knew it, crumbled around me. But beneath the pain, a spark of something new flickered to life. Freedom. Strength. The chance to rebuild. The storm had broken, but the aftermath was just beginning. The aftermath of the revelation was a whirlwind. Family members crowded around me, some offering comfort, others demanding explanations. Through it all, I stood firm, my eyes fixed on the door where Bill and Clara had disappeared. Patricia's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone, please. Let's give Alexis some space." As the crowd dispersed, murmuring in shocked clusters, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Uncle George, Bill's father, his face ashen. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "All of it," I nodded, my throat tight. "I'm sorry, George. I wish it wasn't." He shook his head, eyes brimming with tears. "No, Alexis, we're the ones who should be sorry. How could we not have seen?" Before I could respond, the door burst open. Bill stormed back in, his face contorted with rage. Clara trailed behind him, mascara streaking her cheeks. "How dare you?" Bill snarled, advancing on me. "You had no right to air our private business like this." I stood my ground, feeling Patricia and George flanking me. "No right? You lost any right to privacy when you decided to betray our family." Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Alexis, please. We never meant to hurt you. We fell in love. You have to understand." "Understand?" I laughed bitterly. "Understand that my husband and his cousin have been sneaking around behind my back, planning to abandon their families? Please, enlighten me." Bill's eyes darted around the room, taking in the hostile faces of our relatives. "This isn't how this was supposed to go," he muttered. "No," I agreed. "I'm sure you had a much neater exit planned. Tell me, Bill, when were you going to serve me with those divorce papers I found? Before or after you emptied our joint accounts?" A collective gasp went through the room. Bill paled, realizing just how much I knew. "You went through my personal files?" he sputtered. "And you went through our vows like they meant nothing?" I shot back. Clara stepped between us, her eyes pleading. "Please, everyone, we can work this out civilly. There's no need for all this drama." Something inside me snapped. "Drama? You want to talk about drama, Clara? How about the drama of explaining to my children why their father abandoned them? Or the drama of facing our friends, our colleagues, knowing everyone will be whispering about how I wasn't enough to keep my husband from straying?" I advanced on her, my voice rising. "You two didn't just have an affair. You systematically destroyed two families. You lied, you schemed, you betrayed everyone who ever loved you. And for what? A fantasy of running away together?" Bill grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. "That's enough, Alexis. You've had your revenge. Now let's discuss this like adults." I wrenched away from him, my eyes blazing. "Don't you dare touch me. We're far past discussion, Bill. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences." Patricia stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "Bill, Clara, I think it's time you left. You're no longer welcome in this family." "Mom," Bill started, but Patricia held up a hand. "No, I've made my decision. Go." As they turned to leave, defeated and humiliated, I felt a sudden wave of exhaustion wash over me. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation ebbed away, leaving me hollow. Patricia wrapped an arm around me, steadying me. "It's over, Alexis. You did it." I nodded, watching as Bill and Clara walked out of our lives. But even as relief flooded through me, a new fear took hold. What now? How did I begin to rebuild my life from the ashes of this betrayal? As the door closed behind them, I realized the hardest part of my journey was just beginning. 6 months after the fateful family reunion, I stood in the courthouse, my heart pounding as the judge delivered his verdict. In the matter of Alexis Thompson versus William Thompson, this court grants full custody of the minor children to Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Thompson will have supervised visitation rights to be reviewed in 1 year. I exhaled slowly, feeling Patricia's reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'd done it. The divorce was final and my children were safe. As we left the courtroom, I saw Bill standing alone, looking lost. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to feel anger, hatred even. Instead, I felt nothing. He was a stranger to me now. "Clara left him," Patricia murmured as we walked past. "Seems their grand love affair couldn't withstand the scrutiny." I nodded, unsurprised. "How are you holding up?" I asked her. Patricia's eyes misted over. "It's not easy, disowning your own child, but he made his choice. Now we make ours." The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. I sold our family home, unable to bear the memories it held. With Patricia's help, I found a cozy house closer to the kids' school. It was smaller, but it was ours. A fresh start. One evening, as I unpacked boxes in our new living room, my daughter Emma approached me, her face serious. "Mom, are you happy now?" she asked. I paused, considering her question carefully. "I'm getting there, sweetheart. It's been hard, but we're going to be okay." She nodded, then hugged me fiercely. "I'm glad you told the truth about Dad and Aunt Clara, even if it hurt." Tears pricked my eyes as I held her close. Sometimes the truth is painful, but it's always better than living a lie. As Emma went to bed, I found myself on the porch, staring at the stars. Patricia joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. I sighed. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Now you have a real life," Patricia finished, "with all its mess and complications, but it's yours, Alexis. You fought for it." I turned to her, feeling a rush of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Patricia. You've been more than a mother-in-law. You're family." She squeezed my hand. "And don't you forget it. We're in this together now." As we sat in comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of betrayal, the thrill of revenge, the fear of an uncertain future. But through it all, I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from my lawyer. Bill and Clara both served with restraining orders. "It's done." I showed Patricia the message, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "It really is over," I breathed. She nodded, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." I clinked my glass against hers. "To family, the ones we choose." As the night deepened around us, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it. I had my children, I had Patricia, and most importantly, I had myself. The perfect life I thought I had was gone, shattered by betrayal and lies. But in its place, I'd built something stronger, something real, a life of my own making, full of love, truth, and resilience. As I headed inside, I paused at the door, taking one last look at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The end of one chapter, but the beginning of so much more. My story, my terms, my brighter horizon. I stood frozen in the doorway of my sister Helen's opulent living room, my heart pounding as I took in the scene before me. Helen, her face twisted with disdain, gripped her daughter Emily's arm tightly. The little girl's eyes were wide with confusion and fear. "You're taking her. I can't have a sick daughter ruining my remarriage. Do you understand, Abby?" Helen hissed, shoving Emily towards me. I instinctively reached out to steady my niece, feeling her small frame trembling beneath my hands. "Helen, what are you talking about? You can't just—" "I can, and I am," Helen snapped, cutting me off. She strode across the room, her high heels clicking against the marble floor. "Joshua's coming to pick me up in an hour, and Emily needs to be gone before then." I gaped at my sister, struggling to process her words. "Joshua, your fiancé? Does he even know about Emily?" Helen's laugh was brittle. "Of course not. And he's not going to find out. That's where you come in, dear sister." Anger flared within me, hot and fierce. "You expect me to just take Emily and pretend she doesn't exist? She's your daughter, Helen. And now she's your problem," Helen retorted, turning away to examine her reflection in a gilded mirror. "I've already packed her things. They're by the door." I looked down at Emily, who hadn't uttered a word since I arrived. Her small face was pale, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. I knelt down beside her, my voice gentle. "Emily, sweetie, are you okay?" Before she could respond, Helen's sharp voice cut through the air. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Abby, don't coddle her. She'll be fine with you and Richard. You've always wanted kids, right? Well, here's your chance." The casual cruelty in Helen's tone made my blood boil. I stood up, squaring my shoulders. "You can't just abandon your child, Helen. This isn't like when we were kids and you dump your responsibilities on me. This is a human being. Your daughter." Helen whirled around, her eyes flashing. "Don't you dare lecture me about parenting, Abby. You have no idea what it's been like dealing with her issues. I deserve a chance at happiness, and Joshua is my ticket out of this mess." I felt Emily press closer to my side, and I wrapped an arm protectively around her shoulders. "And what about Emily's happiness? Have you even considered that?" "She'll be happier with you," Helen said dismissively. "Now, if you don't mind, I need to finish getting ready. Joshua will be here soon." As Helen turned back to the mirror, I made a split-second decision. "Fine, we're leaving. But this isn't over, Helen." I gently guided Emily towards the door, pausing only to grab the small suitcase that held her belongings. As we stepped out into the warm afternoon sun, I heard Helen call out behind us. "Oh, and Abby, don't even think about trying to contact me. As far as I'm concerned, this chapter of my life is closed. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing in the quiet suburban street. I looked down at Emily, who was clutching my hand tightly. "It's okay, sweetheart," I murmured, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're going to come stay with me and Uncle Richard for a while. Is that all right?" Emily nodded silently, her eyes still wide with shock. As we walked to my car, my mind raced. How was I going to explain this to Richard? How could we possibly care for a child, especially one with health issues we knew nothing about? I helped Emily into the back seat, making sure she was securely buckled in. As I slid behind the wheel, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Richard's name flashed on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hey, honey. Listen, we need to talk. Something's happened and, well, we're about to have a house guest." A long-term one. As I started the car and pulled away from Helen's house, I caught sight of Emily in the rearview mirror. Her small face was turned towards the window, a single tear rolling down her cheek. In that moment, I made a silent vow. No matter what it took, I would protect this child and give her the love and stability she deserved, even if it meant going to war with my own sister. I paced the living room, my eyes darting between Emily, who sat quietly on the couch, and Richard, whose face was a mix of shock and concern. "If you're leaving her with us, we won't just babysit. We'll adopt her and make her part of our family," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. Richard nodded, his eyes softening as he looked at Emily. "Of course, Abby. We're in this together." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. A sharp knock at the door made us all jump. I exchanged a worried glance with Richard before going to answer it. My mother, Dolores, stood on the porch, her face tight with anger. "Abigail Tucker, what in God's name is going on? Helen just called me in hysterics." I ushered her inside, my stomach knotting. "Mom, I can explain." But Dolores had already spotted Emily. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "So it's true. You've stolen Helen's daughter." "Stolen?" I sputtered. "Helen abandoned her. She dumped Emily on me and ran off with her new fiancé." Dolores shook her head, lips pursed. "That's not what Helen told me. She said you manipulated her, took advantage of her vulnerable state." "Mom, stop!" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You know Helen. You know how she twists things." But I could see the doubt in my mother's eyes. It was the same look she'd given me countless times growing up, always believing Helen's version of events over mine. Richard stepped forward, his calm voice a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "Dolores, why don't we all sit down and talk about this rationally?" As we settled into the living room, Emily curled up closer to me, her small hand gripping mine tightly. The gesture wasn't lost on my mother, whose expression softened slightly. "Emily, sweetheart," Dolores said gently, "do you want to go home to your mommy?" Emily's grip on my hand tightened. She shook her head vigorously, burying her face against my arm. Dolores frowned, clearly torn. "But Helen says—" "Helen says a lot of things, Mom," I cut in, struggling to keep my voice level. But actions speak louder than words, and Helen's actions show she doesn't want to be a mother. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "We're going to adopt Emily. Give her the stable, loving home she deserves." The silence that followed was deafening. Dolores stared at me, her mouth opening and closing wordlessly. Finally, she found her voice. "Abby, you can't be serious. This will destroy your relationship with Helen." I laughed bitterly. "What relationship, Mom? The one where she dumps her responsibilities on me and you both pretend it's okay?" Dolores flinched as if I'd slapped her. "That's not fair, Abby. Your sister has always come first," I finished for her. "But not this time. Not with Emily's well-being at stake." Just then, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, my blood running cold. It was a text from Helen. "You think you've won? Just wait. I'll make you regret this, little sister." I showed the message to Richard, whose jaw tightened. "We need to talk to a lawyer," he said quietly. Dolores stood up abruptly. "I need some time to process this. But Abby, please, think about what you're doing. This could tear our family apart." As she left, I felt a mix of anger and sadness, but looking at Emily, peacefully asleep against Richard's shoulder, I knew we'd made the right choice. "We're doing the right thing," Richard reassured me, as if reading my thoughts. I nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, difficult battle. Helen's threat loomed over us, a storm gathering on the horizon. but as I watched Richard gently stroke Emily's hair, I knew we'd weather whatever came our way. For Emily's sake, we had to. The soft glow of the nightlight cast shadows across Emily's sleeping face as I tucked her in. "You're our daughter now, Emily. We're going to love and protect you," I whispered, seeing hope flicker in her eyes before they fluttered closed. As I quietly left the room, a memory crashed over me like a tidal wave. I was 10 again, cowering in the corner as Helen screamed at our parents, demanding attention, always demanding. I shook my head, trying to dispel the image. No, Emily would never know that kind of pain. Richard was waiting for me in the kitchen, his face grim. "The lawyer called," he said softly. "Helen's contesting the adoption." My heart plummeted. She can't do that. She abandoned Emily. Apparently she's claiming temporary insanity due to stress, says she never meant to give Emily up permanently. I slammed my fist on the counter, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through my hand. "It's all lies. How can she—" The shrill ring of the phone cut me off. Richard answered, his expression darkening as he listened. "It's for you," he said, handing me the receiver. "It's Helen." My sister's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Hello, dear Abby. Having fun playing house with my daughter? What do you want, Helen?" I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. "Oh, I think you know. I want my daughter back, and if you don't bring her to me willingly, I'll make sure everyone knows what a manipulative, child-stealing witch you really are." The line went dead. I stood there frozen until Richard gently pried the phone from my hand. "What did she say?" he asked, though his eyes told me he already knew. I recounted Helen's threats, my voice shaking. "She's going to turn everyone against us, Richard. My mother already believes her lies. What if—" A small voice from the doorway made us both jump. "Aunt Abby, are you crying?" Emily stood there, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with concern. I quickly wiped my eyes, forcing a smile. "No, sweetie, I'm fine. Did you have a bad dream?" She nodded, padding over to us. Without hesitation, Richard scooped her up, holding her close. "Want to talk about it?" he asked gently. Emily buried her face in his shoulder. "I dreamed Mommy came and took me away," she mumbled. "I don't want to go back. Please don't make me go back." My heart shattered. I joined the embrace, sandwiching Emily between us. "Never," I promised fiercely. "You're staying right here with us." As we stood there, a family united, I felt a surge of determination. Helen had tormented me my entire life, always taking, always destroying, but not this time. This time I would fight back. The next morning, I called our family doctor, Dr. Patel. "I need Emily's medical records," I explained. "All of them, from birth until now." There was a pause on the other end. "Abby, you know I can't release those without Helen's permission." "Please," I begged. "It's important. Emily's health and safety might depend on it." Another long pause. Then, "Come by the office this afternoon. We'll talk." As I hung up, I caught sight of Emily at the kitchen table, happily munching on toast, her legs swinging freely. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked truly relaxed, truly at home. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen. "Tick-tock, little sister? Time's running out." I deleted it without responding, my jaw set. Let her make her threats. I had the truth on my side, and I would use it to protect Emily, no matter the cost. As I joined Emily at the table, she looked up at me with a tentative smile. "Can we go to the park today?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, ruffling her hair. "But first we need to make a quick stop at the doctor's office." Emily's smile faltered, fear creeping into her eyes. I leaned in close, my voice soft but firm. "Don't worry. I promise, from now on, doctor visits will only ever be to keep you healthy and strong. No more tests, no more pain, okay?" She nodded slowly, trust replacing the fear. As we finished breakfast, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. Helen might think she held all the cards, but she had no idea what I was willing to do to keep Emily safe. The war for Emily's future had begun, and I intended to win. The school bell rang, and I watched with pride as Emily bounded out of the classroom, her backpack bouncing with each step. Her smile was radiant, a far cry from the timid child who had arrived on our doorstep months ago. "Aunt Abby, Uncle Richard," she called out, rushing into our arms. "I got an A on my science project." Richard beamed, ruffling her hair. "That's our girl. We knew you could do it." As we walked to the car, Emily chattered excitedly about her day. My heart swelled with love and pride. This was how it should be, a child feeling safe, loved, and encouraged to thrive. But our bubble of happiness was about to burst. As we approached our car, I froze. Helen was leaning against it, her designer sunglasses perched on her nose, a smirk playing on her lips. Well, isn't this a touching family scene?" she drawled. Emily instinctively pressed closer to me, her small hand gripping mine tightly. Richard stepped forward, his voice low and warning. "Helen, you shouldn't be here." She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, relax. Can't an aunt visit her niece?" Her gaze zeroed in on Emily. "Hello, darling. Mommy's missed you so much." Emily's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel her trembling. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. "Helen, leave, now," I hissed. "You're scaring Emily." Helen's smirk widened. "Am I? Or are you just afraid she'll remember who her real mother is?" She took a step closer, and I instinctively moved Emily behind me. "Your real family is right here, Emily," Richard said firmly, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Helen's eyes flashed dangerously. "Oh, that's rich. You think you can just play house and erase me? I have news for you, dear sister. My fiancé, Joshua, he's not just wealthy, he's influential, and he's going to help me get my daughter back." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" She leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper. "Let's just say some people owe him favors, people who can make your little adoption dream disappear." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. But before I could respond, Emily's small voice piped up. "I don't want to go with you. I want to stay with Aunt Abby and Uncle Richard." Helen's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough!" Richard's voice boomed, startling us all. "Helen, leave now, or we're calling the police." For a moment, I thought she might lash out. But then she straightened, smoothing her designer dress. "This isn't over," she spat, before stalking away. The drive home was silent, the weight of Helen's threats hanging over us. As soon as we arrived, I called our lawyer, relaying Helen's words with shaking hands. "This is serious, Abby," he said gravely. "If she's got connections, this could get ugly. We need to be prepared for a fight." After I hung up, I found Richard and Emily in the living room. Emily was curled up on Richard's lap, her face buried in his chest. My heart ached at the sight. "Your real family is right here, Emily," Richard was saying softly. "We love you, and we're going to do everything we can to keep you safe." Emily looked up at me as I entered, her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. I knelt beside them, taking her small hands in mine. "Listen to me, sweetheart. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you are our daughter. We will fight for you with everything we have." As I held my family close, I knew we were at a crossroads. Helen's threats weren't empty. She had resources and determination on her side, but so did we, and we had something she didn't: genuine love for Emily. In that moment, I made a decision. We wouldn't just defend, we would fight back. Helen had underestimated us for the last time. Whatever it took, whatever sacrifices we had to make, we would keep our family together. The battle for Emily's future was about to begin in earnest, and I was ready for war. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime a stark contrast to the dread that filled my stomach. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Helen stood there, immaculate as always, with a man I assumed was Joshua by her side. Her smile was saccharine sweet, but her eyes were cold. "Hello, sister dear," she purred. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" I wanted to slam the door in her face, but I knew that would only make things worse. Reluctantly, I stepped aside. As they entered, I caught sight of Emily peeking around the corner. Her eyes widened with fear, and I gave her a reassuring nod. "Emily, sweetheart, why don't you go help Uncle Richard in the garden?" Helen's eyes narrowed. "No, I think Emily should stay. After all, this concerns her." I felt my anger rising. "Stay away from her, Helen. You lost the right to call yourself her mother when you abandoned her," I said, firmly standing my ground. Joshua cleared his throat. "Mrs. Tucker, I understand this is a delicate situation, but surely you can see that Emily belongs with her mother." "Her mother?" I scoffed. "The woman who dumped her on our doorstep because she was an inconvenience?" Helen's face contorted with rage. "How dare you? I was going through a difficult time. You have no idea what it's like." "No, Helen, you have no idea," I interrupted, my voice shaking with emotion. "You have no idea what it's like to love a child so much, you'd sacrifice everything for them. To stay up all night when they're sick, to celebrate every tiny victory, to—" "Enough," Helen shrieked. She turned to Joshua, her voice suddenly syrupy. "Darling, show her the papers." Joshua pulled out an envelope, his expression uncomfortable. "Mrs. Tucker, we've filed for custody of Emily. Given that Helen is her biological mother, and considering our resources, we're confident the court will rule in our favor." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "You can't do this," I whispered. Helen's triumphant smile made my blood boil. "Oh, but we can, and we will. Emily is coming home with us, where she belongs." Just then, a small voice spoke up. "No." We all turned to see Emily standing in the doorway, her little fists clenched at her sides. "I don't want to go with you. I want to stay here with Aunt Abby and Uncle Richard." Helen's face softened, but there was a dangerous glint in her eye. "Sweetie, don't you miss Mommy? We can be a family again with a new daddy who can give you everything you want." Emily shook her head vehemently. "You're not my mommy anymore. Aunt Abby and Uncle Richard are my parents now. They love me." Helen's mask slipped, revealing the fury beneath. She lunged forward, grabbing Emily's arm. "You ungrateful little brat! After everything I've done for you." I moved without thinking, shoving Helen away from Emily with all my might. "Don't you dare touch her!" Helen stumbled back, shock written across her face. For a moment, the room was silent, except for Emily's quiet sobs. Then Joshua spoke, his voice tight. "I think we should leave now, Helen." As they headed for the door, Helen turned back, her eyes blazing. "This isn't over, Abby. I'll see you in court." The door slammed behind them, and I sank to my knees, pulling Emily into a tight embrace. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. We're not going to let them take you away." As I held her, I caught Richard's eye over her head. His face was grim, but determined. We both knew what this meant. The real battle was just beginning. Later that night, after Emily was asleep, Richard and I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by legal documents and adoption papers. "We can't let them win," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "We can't lose her, Richard." He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "We won't. Whatever it takes, whatever we have to do, we're going to fight for our daughter." In that moment, I made a decision. We wouldn't just defend ourselves in court. We would go on the offensive. It was time to dig up every skeleton in Helen's closet, to expose every lie, every manipulation. The war for Emily's future had begun, and I was ready to fight with everything I had. The courthouse loomed before us, its imposing facade a stark reminder of what was at stake. I gripped Richard's hand tightly as we ascended the steps, Emily between us. Today was the day we'd been dreading and preparing for months. As we entered the courtroom, I saw Helen and Joshua already seated, looking smug and confident. Helen caught my eye and smirked. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to remain calm. We had a plan. Our lawyer, Sarah, approached us. "Remember," she whispered, "stick to the facts. We've got this." The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Helen's lawyer painted a picture of a loving mother who had made a mistake in a moment of weakness, now desperate to reunite with her daughter. It took every ounce of self-control not to scoff audibly. Then it was our turn. Sarah called our first witness, Dr. Patel, Emily's longtime physician. "Dr. Patel, can you describe Emily's health when she was in Helen's care?" Sarah asked. Dr. Patel's face grew grim. Emily was severely undernourished and showed signs of medical neglect. Her condition has improved dramatically since living with the Tuckers. Helen's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. I saw Helen shift uncomfortably in her seat. Next came Emily's teacher, who testified about her academic progress and emotional growth. "Emily has blossomed in the Tuckers' care," she said. "She's confident, happy, and thriving." As the testimony continued, I felt a glimmer of hope. But then Helen's lawyer called his star witness, my mother, Dolores. My heart sank as she took the stand, avoiding my gaze. Helen's lawyer began his questioning, clearly expecting her to support Helen's case. "Mrs. Johnson, in your opinion, who is better suited to raise Emily?" There was a long pause. I held my breath, bracing for the worst. But then my mother straightened her shoulders and looked directly at me. "My daughter Abby," she said firmly. "I was blind for too long to Helen's manipulations, but I've seen how Abby and Richard have loved and cared for Emily. They are her true parents." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Helen's face contorted with rage. I felt tears prick my eyes as my mother finally chose to stand by me. But Helen wasn't done. As the judge called a recess, she cornered me in the hallway, her eyes wild. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "I still have one card left to play. Tell them you're withdrawing your petition, or I'll reveal every dirty secret about our family, including that little incident from your teenage years. You remember, don't you? It would be such a shame if Emily found out her perfect Aunt Abby was once." "Enough." I cut her off, my voice ringing through the hallway. Several heads turned our way. "You will never hurt Emily again. We're done being your puppets," I declared, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. Helen's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed dangerously. "You'll regret this," she spat before storming off. As we re-entered the courtroom, my hands shook. What if Helen followed through on her threat? What if it swayed the judge? What if... Richard squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "we face it together." The judge cleared his throat. "Having reviewed all the evidence and testimony, I'm ready to make my ruling." Time seemed to stand still. Emily pressed close to my side, her small hand in mine. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. "In the matter of custody for Emily Walker," the judge began, "I find in favor of..." Suddenly, the courtroom doors burst open. Joshua strode in, his face a mask of fury. "Your Honor," he called out, "I have new evidence that changes everything." The judge frowned. "Mr. Walker, this is highly irregular," but Joshua was already approaching the bench, a thick folder in his hands. "You need to see this before you make your decision," he insisted. As the judge began reviewing the documents, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. What could Joshua have discovered? Had Helen's final threat come to pass? I looked at Emily's frightened face, then at Richard's determined one. Whatever was in that folder, whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never stop fighting for our family. The courtroom fell into a tense silence as the judge pored over the documents Joshua had presented. My heart raced and I clutched Emily's hand tightly. Richard's arm around my shoulders was the only thing keeping me from crumbling under the weight of uncertainty. Finally, the judge looked up, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Walker, these allegations are serious. If true, they could significantly impact this case." Helen's triumphant smirk made my blood run cold. What could possibly be in those papers? The judge turned to our lawyer. "Counsel, are you aware of the contents of these documents?" Sarah shook her head, looking as bewildered as I felt. "No, Your Honor. We request time to review and respond to this new evidence." "Granted," the judge nodded. "We'll reconvene tomorrow morning. Court is adjourned." As we left the courtroom, Helen sidled up to me, her voice a venomous whisper. "I told you I'd make you regret this, Abby. By tomorrow, everyone will know the truth about you and your perfect little family." Before I could respond, Richard pulled me away. "Don't engage," he murmured. "We need to focus on what's in those papers." Back at our lawyer's office, Sarah spread the documents across her desk. As I read through them, my heart sank. There were old medical records, police reports, and even school incident reports, all painting a picture of a troubled, unstable teenager. Me. "Helen's dug up every mistake I ever made," I whispered, horrified. "My rebellious phase, the time I got caught shoplifting, even my brief stint in therapy after Dad died. She's twisting it all to make me look unfit to raise Emily." Richard's face was grim. "But that was years ago. You were a kid dealing with trauma. Surely the judge will see that?" Sarah sighed. "It's not that simple. Helen's lawyer will argue that these incidents show a pattern of instability. We need to counter this narrative, and fast." As we strategized late into the night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read it. "I know what really happened the night your father died. Withdraw your petition, or I'll tell everyone." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. That night had been a blur of grief and confusion. I'd always blamed myself for not being there when Dad had his heart attack, but how could anyone else know about that? "Abby?" Richard's concerned voice broke through my panic. "What is it?" I showed him the text, watching his face darken. "This is blackmail," he growled. "We need to tell Sarah." But as our lawyer read the message, a new fear gripped me. What if fighting this only made things worse? What if dragging all this up hurt Emily? "Maybe," I whispered, hating myself for even thinking it. "Maybe we should withdraw, for Emily's sake." Richard's eyes widened in disbelief. "Abby, no, we can't let Helen win like this. Emily belongs with us." "But at what cost?" I cried, tears streaming down my face. I can't bear the thought of her learning all this, of her looking at me differently. Sarah leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Abby, listen to me. You've done nothing wrong. These are desperate tactics from someone who knows they're losing. We can fight this. As I wrestled with my doubts, my phone chimed again. This time, it was a video message from Emily, recorded by my mother. Her sweet voice filled the room. Aunt Abby, Uncle Richard, I love you. Please don't let them take me away. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I thought of all we'd been through, of the family we'd built. Helen had taken so much from me over the years, but she wouldn't take this. I looked up at Richard and Sarah, my resolve strengthening. Okay, I said, wiping away my tears. What's our next move? As we huddled together, planning our counterattack, I knew tomorrow would be the fight of our lives. But looking at Emily's smiling face on my phone, I was ready for battle. This is our family now, I thought fiercely. We build our future together, no matter what. 12 years had passed since that fateful day in the courtroom. As I watched Emily, now a poised young woman of 18, adjust her graduation cap, I marveled at how far we'd come. Mom, Dad, hurry up, she called, her eyes sparkling with excitement. We're going to be late for the ceremony. Richard appeared beside me, grinning proudly. Our little girl off to college. Can you believe it? I shook my head, overwhelmed by a rush of memories. The bitter custody battle, Helen's desperate attempts to discredit us, the agonizing wait for the judge's final decision. In the end, the truth had prevailed. Helen's manipulations had backfired spectacularly, exposing her own neglect and deceit. The judge had not only granted us full custody, but had also praised our dedication to Emily's well-being. As we drove to the high school, I couldn't help but think of Helen. Last we'd heard, she was living alone in a small apartment, her dreams of a luxurious life with Joshua shattered. Part of me felt a twinge of pity, but it was overshadowed by the joy of the life we'd built. The graduation ceremony was a blur of emotions. As Emily's name was called, we cheered loudly, our hearts bursting with pride. Mayor Robert Evans, who had become a mentor to Emily over the years, presented her with a special community service award. I caught sight of my mother, Dolores, wiping away tears in the audience. After the ceremony, as we gathered for photos, Emily suddenly grew quiet. Mom, Dad, she said softly, there's someone I invited today. I hope that's okay. I followed her gaze and felt my breath catch. Helen stood at the edge of the crowd, looking older and somehow smaller than I remembered. For a moment I was transported back to all the pain and anger of the past. But then I saw the uncertainty in Helen's eyes, the way she hesitated to approach. Emily squeezed my hand. She reached out a few months ago. We've been talking. I think she's changed. I looked at Richard, seeing my own mix of emotions reflected in his eyes. Then I nodded, making a decision. Go on, I told Emily. Invite her over. As Helen cautiously joined our group, the years of resentment and hurt seemed to melt away. She looked at Emily with a mixture of pride and regret. Congratulations, she said softly. You've grown into an amazing young woman. Emily smiled, then did something that surprised us all. She hugged Helen. Thank you for coming, she said, and thank you for giving me the chance to have the best parents I could have asked for. Helen's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Richard and me. Abby, Richard, I'm so sorry for everything. You gave Emily the life I couldn't. Thank you for loving her when I didn't know how. In that moment, I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lift from my shoulders. We're family, I said simply. All of us. As we posed for a photo, Emily in the center, flanked by Richard and me, with Helen and my mother on either side, I marveled at the journey that had brought us here. The struggles, the tears, the triumphs, all of it had led to this moment of healing and hope. Later that night, as we sat around the dinner table sharing memories and laughter, Emily raised her glass. We're ready for anything now, she said, her voice filled with newfound confidence. Together, nothing can break us. I looked around at the faces of my family, Richard, my rock, Emily, our precious daughter, my mother, finally free from Helen's manipulations, and even Helen, tentatively finding her place in our lives again. I thought of all we'd overcome, of the love that had carried us through the darkest times. To family, I said, raising my own glass, to new beginnings and unbreakable bonds. As our glasses clinked together, I knew that whatever challenges the future held, we would face them as we always had, together, stronger for the trials we'd endured, and filled with love for the family we'd fought so hard to build. I stared at the email on Greg's computer, my heart pounding in my chest. The words on the screen seemed to blur together, but one phrase stood out like a neon sign: financial deceit. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the exchange between Greg and his sister, Lydia. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. "Greg," I called out, my voice wavering. "Can you come here for a minute?" He appeared in the doorway, his brow furrowed. "What's wrong, Char?" I swiveled the laptop towards him, the incriminating email displayed prominently. "Care to explain this?" Greg's face paled as he scanned the contents. "It's not what you think," he stammered, running a hand through his thinning hair. "This is for the family." I let out a bitter laugh. "For the family? Or for Lydia's latest scheme?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "How could you do this behind my back, Greg? After everything we've built together?" He held up his hands defensively. "Char, you know how Lydia gets. She was in a tight spot, and I couldn't just turn my back on her. So you decided to betray my trust instead?" I shook my head, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes. "How much did you give her this time?" Greg averted his gaze, his jaw clenched. 70,000. The air seemed to leave my lungs. $70,000, our hard-earned savings, meant for our future and our daughter Ellie's education. All funneled into Lydia's bottomless pit of financial irresponsibility. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Ellie's voice startled me, and I turned to see her standing in the hallway, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 20 years old, she was wise beyond her years, and I could see the concern etched on her face. "It's nothing, honey," Greg said, forcing a smile. "Just a little family misunderstanding." I opened my mouth to protest, but the doorbell rang, cutting me off. Greg shot me a warning look before heading to answer it. Moments later, Lydia breezed into the room, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes a stark contrast to the turmoil she was causing. "Charlotte, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing my cheek. "I'm so glad you're both here. We have a bit of a situation." I tensed, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "You don't say." Lydia's gaze flickered between Greg and me, her perfectly painted lips curling into a smirk. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is a family matter, after all." As she launched into her latest sob story, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. I had been complacent for too long, allowing Greg and Lydia's manipulations to dictate the course of our lives. But not anymore. This time, I would stand my ground and protect what mattered most, my family's future and my own sense of self-worth. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. Lydia's words hung in the air like a noxious cloud, seeping into every corner of the room. "This is for Greg's future, too," she insisted, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the arm of the sofa. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Of course, she would try to spin this as some noble act, a sacrifice for the greater good of the family. But I knew better. This was just another one of her schemes, and Greg had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. "Stop with the lies, Lydia," I said, my voice low and steady. "I know about the emails, the money." Ellie shifted uncomfortably beside me, her gaze darting between Greg and me. I could see the confusion and hurt etched on her face, and my heart ached for her. She didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of this mess. Greg cleared his throat, his eyes pleading with me to let it go. "Char, let's not do this in front of Ellie." "No," I said firmly. "She deserves to know the truth." I turned to my daughter, taking her hand in mine. "Your father has been funneling money from our joint savings account to cover Lydia's gambling debts." Ellie's eyes widened, and she looked at Greg in disbelief. "Is this true?" Greg opened his mouth, but Lydia cut him off. "It's not as simple as that, Ellie," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I made some poor choices, yes, but your father was only trying to help me get back on my feet." I scoffed. "By taking $70,000 from our family's future? Without even consulting me?" Lydia waved a dismissive hand. Details. The important thing is that we're family, and family looks out for each other." I could feel my blood boiling, my carefully cultivated composure cracking. Family doesn't manipulate and lie to each other, I spat. Family doesn't betray each other's trust for their own selfish gain. Greg flinched at my words, but Lydia remained unfazed. You're being dramatic, Charlotte, she said, her lips curling into a condescending smile. Greg was just trying to do the right thing. The right thing, I echoed, my voice rising. The right thing would have been to come clean with me from the start. The right thing would have been to let you face the consequences of your actions instead of enabling you. Lydia's eyes narrowed, and for a moment her mask of false concern slipped, revealing the entitled, manipulative woman beneath. You're one to talk about consequences, she hissed. You've been living a life of luxury off Greg's hard work for years. I recoiled as if she had slapped me. How dare you? I sputtered. I've been the one holding this family together, working my ass off to provide for us, while Greg was off chasing get-rich-quick schemes with you. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Greg looked stricken, his face ashen, while Ellie stared at her father with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Lydia, however, simply shrugged. Whatever helps you sleep at night, dear sister-in-law, she said, rising to her feet. Just remember, blood is thicker than water, and you'll need us more than you think. With that parting shot, she sauntered out of the room, leaving a trail of tension and betrayal in her wake. I sank back onto the couch, suddenly drained. Greg reached out to me, but I flinched away from his touch. Char, please, he pleaded. Let me explain. But I had heard enough explanations, enough excuses. The truth was laid bare before me, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. My husband, the man I had trusted with my heart and my future, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And as I looked into Ellie's eyes, brimming with unshed tears, I knew that I couldn't let this stand. It was time to take control of my life, to protect what mattered most. The gloves were off, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine, with or without Greg by my side. The silence that followed Lydia's departure was deafening, the weight of her parting words hanging heavy in the air. I could feel the anger and hurt swirling within me, threatening to boil over. How could you betray our trust like this, Greg? I asked, my voice trembling with barely contained emotion. Our future? Ellie's future? Greg ran a hand over his face, his shoulders slumped in defeat. It's complicated, Char, he said, his tone pleading. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I let out a bitter laugh. The pressure? From your manipulative sister, you mean? I shook my head in disbelief. That's no excuse, Greg. We're supposed to be partners, a team. But instead, you've been lying to me, stealing from our family's future to enable Lydia's reckless behavior. Ellie shifted uncomfortably beside me, her eyes downcast. I could only imagine the turmoil she must be feeling, caught in the crossfire of her parents' crumbling marriage. Greg's gaze flickered to our daughter, and I could see the guilt etched on his face. I never meant for it to go this far, he said, his voice strained. Lydia just kept needing more and more, and I couldn't turn my back on her. She's family. And what am I, Greg? I shot back, my voice rising. Just some inconvenient obstacle in your twisted idea of family loyalty? He flinched at my words, but I pressed on, the dam of emotions finally bursting forth. I've been the one holding this family together, working my ass off to provide for us while you were off chasing get-rich-quick schemes with Lydia. And this is how you repay me? By betraying my trust, jeopardizing our daughter's future? Greg opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. Save it, I said, my voice low and steady. I'm done with the excuses, the lies. You've made your choice, Greg, and it's clear where your loyalties lie. I turned to Ellie, my heart aching at the sight of her distress. Honey, I'm so sorry you've been caught up in this mess, I said, taking her hand in mine. But I promise you, I'm going to make things right, no matter what it takes. Ellie nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I know, Mom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I trust you. Those simple words were like a balm to my wounded soul, reminding me of what truly mattered, the love and trust of my daughter, the one person who had stood by me through it all. I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her unwavering support. Then I turned back to Greg, my resolve hardening like steel. You have one chance to come clean, Greg, I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. Tell me everything, every scheme, every lie, every penny you've funneled to Lydia, and maybe, just maybe, we can start to rebuild some semblance of trust. Greg's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of hope in his gaze. But then his expression hardened and he shook his head. "I can't," he said, his voice barely audible. "Lydia, she needs me." In that moment I knew our marriage was well and truly over. The man I had loved, the partner I had trusted, was gone, replaced by a shell of a person, trapped in Lydia's web of manipulation and deceit. But as I looked at Ellie, her hands still clasped in mine, I knew that I had to be strong, for her sake and for my own. The storm was brewing, and I was ready to weather it, no matter the cost. I stared at the computer screen, my eyes burning from the countless hours spent poring over financial records and email trails. The evidence was damning, a twisted web of deceit spun by Greg and Lydia that threatened to unravel everything I had worked so hard to build. A soft knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. "Come in," I called out, quickly minimizing the windows on my screen. Mariana, my trusted colleague and mentor, stepped into the office, her warm smile a welcome respite from the storm raging within me. "Charlotte, you look like you could use a break," she said, her voice laced with concern. I let out a weary sigh, running a hand through my disheveled hair. "I'm fine, Mariana, just trying to make sense of this mess." Her brow furrowed as she took in my haggard appearance. "This is about more than work, isn't it?" she asked gently. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal. But Mariana had been a constant source of wisdom and support throughout my career, and I knew I could trust her. "It's Greg," I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "He's been funneling money to his sister, Lydia, behind my back. Thousands of dollars, gone, just to enable her reckless behavior." Mariana's eyes widened and she sank into the chair across from me. "Oh, Charlotte," she murmured, her voice heavy with sympathy. "I'm so sorry." I shook my head, blinking back tears of frustration. "I've just been so blind, Mariana. How could I not see what was happening right under my nose?" She reached across the desk, her warm hand covering mine in a comforting gesture. "You're not to blame, dear," she said firmly. "The fault lies with those who betrayed your trust." Her words struck a chord within me, and I felt a flicker of resolve ignite in my chest. She was right. I was the victim here, not the perpetrator. Greg and Lydia had made their choices, and it was time for me to make mine. "What if I can't piece it all back together, Mariana?" I asked, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "What if the damage is too deep, too irreparable?" Mariana's gaze was steady, her eyes shining with a wisdom born of experience. "Charlotte, you are stronger than you think," she said, her voice gentle but unwavering. "Don't let them drag you down. You have the power to rise above this, to forge your own path." Her words resonated within me, igniting a flame of determination that burned away the doubt and fear that had been weighing me down. I was Charlotte Emerson, a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had built a successful career and a loving family through sheer grit and resilience. And I would not let Greg and Lydia's betrayal define me. As if sensing my newfound resolve, Mariana gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Whatever you decide, know that you have my support," she said, a warm smile spreading across her face. "You are not alone in this." I returned her smile, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Thank you, Mariana," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Nonsense, my dear. You'd find a way to conquer the world, with or without me." Her words ignited a spark of laughter within me, and for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but with allies like Mariana by my side, I knew I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Mariana rose to leave, I felt a newfound sense of clarity wash over me. Greg had made his choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. No more excuses, no more lies. I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful, and chart my own course forward. The facade had crumbled, and I was ready to embrace the reality that lay beneath. A reality where I, Charlotte Emerson, was the master of my own destiny. The weight of the evidence in my hands felt like a lead anchor, dragging me deeper into the murky depths of betrayal. But I knew I couldn't turn back now, not when the truth was finally within my grasp. "Charlotte, what's going on?" Margaret's voice cut through the tension, her brow furrowed with concern. "This infighting is tearing us apart." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. "Ron, Margaret, You need to know what Greg and Lydia have done. Greg's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, silencing him. This was my moment, my chance to lay bare the tangled web of lies that had ensnared our family. For years, Greg has been funneling money from our joint savings to cover Lydia's debts, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor of anger coursing through me. Thousands upon thousands of dollars siphoned away without my knowledge or consent. Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while Ron's expression hardened into a mask of stoic disapproval. "Is this true?" he demanded, his gaze boring into Greg and Lydia. Lydia, ever the master manipulator, was the first to respond. "Daddy, you know how these things can spiral out of control," she simpered, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. "I made some poor choices, but Greg was only trying to help me get back on my feet." I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "Don't buy into her lies, Ron," I said, my voice laced with contempt. "She's been playing you both for fools, using Greg's misguided sense of loyalty to bleed us dry." From the corner of my eye, I saw Greg flinch, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He knew the jig was up, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of the truth. "Charlotte's right," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I should have been honest from the start, but Lydia, she just kept needing more and more." Lydia's mask of innocence slipped, her eyes narrowing into slits of fury. "You spineless worm," she hissed, rounding on Greg. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" The room descended into chaos, with Margaret sobbing and Ron bellowing for order. In the midst of the pandemonium, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had finally broken, and the truth lay bare before us all. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the din like a knife. "This ends now, Lydia." All eyes turned to me, and I could feel the weight of their collective gaze pressing down upon me. But I refused to falter, drawing strength from the knowledge that I held the power in my hands. "You have one chance to take responsibility for your actions," I said, my voice low and steady. "Admit to what you've done, and we can move forward as a family." Lydia's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes glinting with defiance. "Or what, Charlotte? You'll go running to the authorities like a scared little girl?" I met her gaze unflinchingly, my resolve unwavering. "Or I expose everything to our extended family and community," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "Every lie, every scheme, every penny you've bled from us, all laid bare for the world to see." A hush fell over the room, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Greg's parents looked stunned, their faces pale with shock and dismay. Lydia, however, simply laughed, a bitter, mocking sound that sent a chill down my spine. "You'll regret this, Charlotte," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "The family will never forgive you." But as I looked around the room, taking in the faces of those I loved most, I knew that I had already won. The truth was out, and Lydia's grip on our lives was slipping. "Better to be true and alone than entangled in falsehood with company," I said, my voice ringing with conviction. In that moment, I knew that the path ahead would be arduous, fraught with pain and heartbreak. But I was ready to face the consequences of my actions, ready to forge a new path forward, free from the shackles of manipulation and deceit. The showdown had begun, and I was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. Lydia's words hung in the air like a poisonous cloud, her threat reverberating through the room. "You'll regret this, Charlotte. The family will never forgive you." I met her gaze unflinchingly, my resolve hardening like steel. "Better to be true and alone than entangled in falsehood with company," I said, my voice ringing with conviction. Greg's parents exchanged a troubled glance, their faces etched with conflicting emotions. I could see the struggle playing out behind their eyes, the desire to believe their children warring with the stark reality of the truth laid bare before them. Lydia, sensing their wavering loyalty, turned on the waterworks, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. "Mommy, Daddy, please," she simpered, her voice thick with false anguish. "You know, I would never intentionally hurt this family." But her manipulations fell on deaf ears. The evidence I had presented was damning, a mountain of financial records and email trails that left no room for doubt or excuses. Ron was the first to break the tense silence, his voice gruff with barely contained anger. "Enough of this nonsense," he growled, fixing Lydia with a steely glare. "Your sister-in-law has presented irrefutable proof of your misdeeds. It's time to face the consequences. Lydia's jaw dropped, her carefully cultivated mask of innocence shattering into 1,000 pieces. But you're supposed to be on my side, she sputtered, her eyes darting between her parents in disbelief. Margaret, her face pale and drawn, reached out to grasp her husband's hand. We're on the side of truth, Lydia, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and resolve. And the truth is, you've betrayed this family's trust in the most egregious way. A hush fell over the room as the weight of Margaret's words sank in. Greg, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, seemed to shrink into himself, his shoulders slumped in defeat. But Lydia was not one to go down without a fight. This is all her doing, she spat, rounding on me with a venomous glare. She's turned you against your own flesh and blood. I opened my mouth to respond, but Mariana beat me to it, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. That's enough, Lydia, she said, her tone brooking no argument. The only person responsible for this mess is you. Mariana's unwavering support was like a balm to my soul, and I felt a surge of gratitude towards my mentor and friend. She had been by my side from the beginning, offering wisdom and guidance when I needed it most. As if sensing my renewed strength, Lydia's bravado faltered, her eyes darting towards the door. But before she could make a move, Ron stepped forward, his expression steely. You're cut off, Lydia, he said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. No more handouts, no more enabling. It's time you faced the consequences of your actions. Lydia's face contorted with rage, her carefully cultivated facade crumbling into a twisted mask of fury. You'll regret this, she snarled, her eyes wild and unhinged. All of you. But her threats rang hollow, her power over the family finally broken. As she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end the truth had prevailed. And as I looked around at the faces of those who had stood by me, Mariana, Ellie, even Greg's parents, I knew that I was not alone. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Lydia's reign of terror was over, and I was ready to take control of my life once more. As the dust settled, I turned to Ellie, my heart swelling with pride at the strength and resilience she had shown throughout this ordeal. It's going to be okay, honey, I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. We're going to get through this, together. Ellie nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and admiration. I know, Mom, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You've shown me what it means to be truly strong. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the courage and determination to face them head-on. With the unwavering support of my daughter and my newfound allies, I was ready to forge a new path, one free from the shackles of manipulation and deceit. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And as I looked towards the future, I felt a sense of purpose and resolve that I hadn't felt in years. It was time to take control of my destiny, once and for all. The silence that followed Lydia's dramatic exit was deafening, the weight of her actions hanging heavy in the air. But as I looked around at the faces of those who had stood by me, Mariana, Ellie, even Greg's parents, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a newfound sense of peace and resolve had taken root. Mom? Ellie's voice broke the stillness, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. I'm so proud of you. You've shown me what it means to be truly strong. Her words struck a chord deep within me, and I felt a surge of emotion welling up in my chest. Through all the turmoil and heartbreak, Ellie had been my constant, a beacon of love and support that had guided me through the darkest of times. Ellie, I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. Anything I do for us. Love is our true wealth, and as long as we have that, we'll be okay. She nodded, her arms tightening around me. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a united front. A soft cough drew my attention back to the others in the room, and I turned to see Greg hovering uncertainly in the doorway. His eyes were downcast, his shoulders slumped in defeat, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of pity for the man I had once loved. Char, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I know I've made mistakes, unforgivable mistakes, but please, let me try to make things right. I studied him for a long moment, weighing his words against the weight of his betrayal. Part of me yearned for the easy path, the chance to salvage what was left of our marriage and move on with our lives. But a deeper, more primal part of me knew that it was too late for reconciliation. The trust had been shattered, the foundation of our relationship irreparably damaged by his lies and deceit. "I'm sorry, Greg," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor of emotion coursing through me. "But it's too late for apologies. You made your choice when you chose to stand by Lydia, even after everything she put us through." He flinched as if I had struck him, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Please, Char," he pleaded, taking a step towards me. "I'll do anything, just give me another chance." But I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "No, Greg," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "It's over. I can't keep living in the shadow of your lies, constantly wondering when the next betrayal will come." Ellie shifted beside me, her hand finding mine and giving it a gentle squeeze. Her silent support was all the strength I needed to forge ahead, to sever the ties that had bound me to a life of manipulation and deceit. "It's time for me to take control of my life," I said, my gaze sweeping over Greg and his parents, who had remained silent witnesses to our exchange. "I'm done being a victim. It's done being taken for granted and underappreciated." Greg opened his mouth as if to protest, but I cut him off with a shake of my head. "This is my moment, Greg," I said, my voice laced with a newfound sense of determination. "My chance to forge a new path, one free from the shackles of your sister's toxic influence." A flicker of resignation passed over his features, and he nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday." I said nothing, my silence speaking volumes. Forgiveness was a luxury I couldn't afford, not when the wounds of his betrayal were still so raw and fresh. As Greg turned and left, his footsteps echoing hollowly in the stillness, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a newfound sense of clarity had taken root. It was time to start building a new chapter, one brick at a time. With Ellie by my side and the unwavering support of my newfound allies, I knew that I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope, a beacon of light cutting through the darkness that had threatened to consume me. As I looked around at the familiar surroundings of my home, I felt a sense of purpose and determination wash over me. This was my sanctuary, my safe haven, and I was ready to reclaim it as my own. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And as I turned to face the future, I knew that I would emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. It was time to take control of my destiny, once and for all. The gentle hum of conversation and laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the tumultuous events that had preceded this moment. As I surveyed the crowd gathered for the community celebration, I couldn't help but marvel at the transformation that had taken place, not just in my own life, but in the lives of those around me. "Look at you now, Charlotte." Mariana's voice broke through my reverie, her warm smile a familiar comfort. "You've come such a long way." I returned her smile, feeling a swell of gratitude for the unwavering support she had shown me throughout this journey. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mariana," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You were there for me when I needed it most." She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Nonsense, my dear. You had the strength within you all along. I merely helped you see it." As I looked around at the familiar faces mingling and chatting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. These were the people who had stood by me, offering their support and encouragement when the world seemed to be crumbling around me. "Mom?" Ellie's voice drew my attention, and I turned to see her beaming at me, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and affection. "We're going to be just fine, aren't we?" I pulled her into a tight embrace, savoring the moment of connection with my daughter, the one constant in a world that had been turned upside down. "Yes, honey," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "We're going to be more than fine." As I held her close, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us to this point. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the struggle to reclaim control of my life. It had all been worth it, if only to reach this moment of clarity and peace. "Charlotte!" a voice called out. and I turned to see Margaret and Ron making their way towards us, their faces etched with genuine warmth and affection. "We're so proud of you, dear," Margaret said, pulling me into a gentle embrace. "You've shown such strength and resilience through all of this." Ron nodded in agreement, his eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and regret. "We should have seen the truth sooner," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "But you never gave up, and for that, you have our eternal gratitude." I felt a lump form in my throat, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from these two people who had once been so deeply entangled in Lydia's web of deceit. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It means more than you know." As the evening wore on, I found myself surrounded by a network of allies and supporters, colleagues, friends, and even members of the community who had rallied behind me in my darkest hour. Their words of encouragement and admiration buoyed my spirits, reminding me of the incredible journey I had undertaken and the obstacles I had overcome. And through it all, Ellie remained by my side, a constant source of strength and inspiration. Her unwavering belief in me had been the fuel that kept me going, even when the path ahead seemed shrouded in darkness. As the celebration drew to a close, I found myself standing on the periphery, watching as the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed. A sense of peace washed over me, a feeling of contentment and closure that I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt truly ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. With the support of my newfound allies and the love of my daughter, I knew that I had the strength and resilience to forge a new path, one built on the foundations of truth, integrity, and self-worth. As I turned to leave, Mariana's words echoed in my mind. "Look at you now, Charlotte. You've come such a long way." And in that moment, I knew that she was right. I had come a long way, further than I could have ever imagined. But the journey was far from over, and with each step forward, I felt a newfound sense of purpose and determination. The echoes of betrayal had faded, replaced by the resounding chorus of hope and possibility. And as I looked towards the horizon, I knew that the best was yet to come. The drawer creaked as I pulled it open, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I shouldn't be snooping through Leonard's things, but something had been off lately. His distant behavior, the hushed phone calls, the late nights at the office. I needed answers. My fingers brushed against a stack of papers, and I pulled them out. A letter addressed to Leonard caught my eye. I unfolded it with trembling hands, my eyes scanning the words, my breath caught in my throat as the truth unraveled before me. Leonard had a hidden life, a secret that shattered the very foundation of our 20-year marriage. "What the hell are you doing?" Leonard's voice boomed from behind me, causing me to jump. I spun around, the letter still clutched in my hand. "How dare you snoop through my things?" he shouted, his face contorted with rage. "If you step out of line, I'll make sure you lose everything." I stumbled back, my heart racing. "Leonard, what is this? Who is this woman?" He snatched the letter from my hand, his eyes blazing. "It's none of your damn business, Carolyn. You have no right to question me." Tears stung my eyes as I watched him storm out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sank onto the bed, my world crumbling around me. How could this be happening? We had just retired, ready to enjoy our golden years together. I had been so excited to become a grandmother, to spend more time with our family. But now everything felt like a lie. Leonard's distant behavior, his mother Evelyn's constant criticism of my homemaking and child-rearing abilities. It all made sense now. They had been hiding something from me, and I was determined to uncover the truth. I wiped my tears away, a newfound determination rising within me. I couldn't let them control me any longer. I had to fight for my family, for the future I had always dreamed of. The next morning, Evelyn arrived for her daily visit, her sharp eyes scanning the house for any imperfections. "Carolyn, dear, you really should dust more often," she tutted, running a finger along the mantelpiece. "And what's this? I hear about Leonard being upset with you." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my composure. "Evelyn, I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and Leonard." She scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "You forget your place, Carolyn. Leonard is my son, and I will always stand by him. If you can't fulfill your duties as a wife, then perhaps you don't deserve to be part of this family." Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt. I had spent too many years bowing to her every whim, trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, but no more. "I think it's time for you to leave, Evelyn," I said firmly, holding the door open for her. "I have a lot to think about, and I need some space." She huffed, grabbing her purse and storming out of the house. I closed the door behind her, leaning against it for support. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but I was ready to fight for what was right. As I stood there, my mind racing with possibilities, I heard a soft knock at the door. I opened it to find Thomas, Leonard's father, standing on the porch. He gave me a sympathetic smile, his eyes filled with understanding. "Carolyn, I couldn't help but overhear what happened with Evelyn," he said gently. "I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what. You don't have to go through this alone." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, and I stepped aside to let him in. Perhaps I had found an unexpected ally in this battle, someone who could help me navigate the treacherous waters ahead. The days following my discovery of Leonard's secret were a blur of emotions. I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every sound, wondering what other lies he had been hiding from me. But I couldn't let my guard down, not with Evelyn's daily visits and her constant criticism. "Carolyn, dear, you really should dust more often," she said, running her finger along the mantelpiece. "And what's this I hear about Leonard being upset with you?" I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my composure. "Evelyn, I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and Leonard." She scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "You forget your place, Carolyn. Leonard is my son, and I will always stand by him. If you can't fulfill your duties as a wife, then perhaps you don't deserve to be part of this family." Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt. I had spent too many years bowing to her every whim, trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, but no more. "I think it's time for you to leave, Evelyn," I said firmly, holding the door open for her. "I have a lot to think about, and I need some space." She huffed, grabbing her purse and storming out of the house. I closed the door behind her, leaning against it for support. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, but I was ready to fight for what was right. That night, Leonard came home late, as usual. I was waiting for him in the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had to confront him about the letter, but I was terrified of what he might say. "Leonard, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. He looked at me, his eyes cold and distant. "What is it now, Carolyn?" "I've had a long day, and I don't have time for your nonsense." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I found the letter, Leonard. I know about your secret life, about the other woman." His face contorted with rage, and he slammed his fist on the table. "How dare you accuse me of such things? I've given you everything, Carolyn. A home, a family, a life of comfort, and this is how you repay me? By snooping through my things and making wild accusations?" I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated by his anger. "I'm not making accusations, Leonard. I saw the letter with my own eyes. I know the truth." He laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that sent shivers down my spine. "The truth? You wouldn't know the truth if it slapped you in the face, Carolyn. You're just a naive little housewife who's in way over her head." Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back, determined not to let him see me cry. "I may be a housewife, Leonard, but I'm not naive. I know what I saw, and I won't let you gaslight me into believing otherwise." He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "Listen carefully, Carolyn. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll make sure you lose everything. The house, the money, the family. I'll take it all away from you, and you'll be left with nothing. Do you understand?" I nodded, my heart sinking in my chest. I knew he meant every word, and I couldn't risk losing everything I had worked so hard for. But I also knew that I couldn't live like this anymore, trapped in a marriage built on lies and deceit. As Leonard stormed out of the room, I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of his threats and Evelyn's constant criticism. I needed to find a way out, a way to break free from this toxic cycle. But how could I do that when everyone seemed to be against me? When my own husband and mother-in-law were determined to keep me in my place, to make me feel small and insignificant? I didn't have the answers, but I knew I had to keep fighting. For myself, for my family, for the life I deserved. and I wouldn't stop until I found a way to make that happen. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart, the weight of Leonard's threats still lingering in my mind. I knew I couldn't face another day of Evelyn's criticism and Leonard's cold indifference, so I decided to take a walk to clear my head. As I stepped outside, I noticed Thomas, Leonard's father, tending to the garden. He looked up and smiled, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "Good morning, Carolyn. How are you holding up?" I hesitated, not wanting to burden him with my troubles, but something about his gentle demeanor made me feel safe. "I've been better, Thomas. It's been a tough few days." He nodded, setting down his gardening tools and gesturing for me to sit beside him on the bench. "I can only imagine. I've seen the strain you've been under, and I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what." Tears welled up in my eyes at his words, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thank you, Thomas. That means more to me than you know." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the birds flit from tree to tree. Finally, Thomas spoke, his voice soft and contemplative. "You know, Carolyn, I've been married to Evelyn for over 50 years, and it hasn't always been easy. She can be a handful, to say the least." I couldn't help but chuckle at his understatement. "That's putting it mildly." He smiled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I know, but I've learned a thing or two about dealing with her over the years. The key is to stand your ground, to not let her push you around. She may be stubborn, but so are you." I nodded, feeling a newfound sense of strength and determination. "You're right, Thomas. I can't let her control me anymore. I need to fight for what I believe in, for what I know is right." He patted my hand, his touch warm and reassuring, "And I'll be right there beside you every step of the way. You're not alone in this, Carolyn." We spent the rest of the morning together, talking and laughing as Thomas shared stories of his own tumultuous past with Evelyn. It was a side of him I had never seen before, and I found myself growing more and more fond of him with each passing minute. As the sun began to climb higher in the sky, Thomas stood up, stretching his arms above his head. "Well, I suppose I should get back to my gardening. These flowers won't plant themselves." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in days. "Thank you, Thomas, for everything." He winked, his smile warm and genuine. "Anytime, Carolyn, and remember, you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." With that, he picked up his tools and set to work, whistling a cheerful tune as he went. I watched him for a moment, feeling a sense of gratitude and affection wash over me. In the midst of all the chaos and heartbreak, I had found an unexpected ally, a friend who believed in me and supported me unconditionally. But as I turned to head back inside, I saw Evelyn standing in the doorway. Her eyes narrowed and her lips pursed. "What were you doing out there with Thomas?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. I felt my newfound confidence waver for a moment, but then I remembered Thomas's words. I couldn't let her push me around anymore. I had to stand my ground. "We were just talking, Evelyn. There's no need to get upset," she scoffed, her face twisting into a scowl. "Talking? More like conspiring against me, I'm sure. You've always been jealous of my relationship with Thomas, haven't you?" I shook my head, feeling a surge of anger and frustration rise up within me. "That's not true, Evelyn. I have no reason to be jealous of you. I'm just trying to find some peace and support during a difficult time, and Thomas has been kind enough to offer that to me." She opened her mouth to retort, but I held up my hand, cutting her off. "I'm done listening to your accusations and criticisms, Evelyn. From now on, I'm going to do what's best for me and my family, whether you like it or not." With that, I brushed past her and headed inside, my heart racing, but my head held high. I knew there would be more battles to come, but for now, I had won a small victory. And with Thomas by my side, I felt like I could face anything. The confrontation with Evelyn left me shaken, but I refused to let it dampen my spirits. I had Thomas's support, and that was enough to keep me going. I spent the next few days focusing on my own well-being, taking long walks in the park and reading my favorite books, but my newfound peace was short-lived. One afternoon, while cleaning out Leonard's study, I stumbled upon an envelope hidden in the back of his desk drawer. My heart raced as I pulled it out, my hands trembling with anticipation. Inside, I found a stack of photographs and letters. The photos showed Leonard with a younger woman, their arms wrapped around each other, their faces beaming with happiness. The letters were even more damning, revealing a long-term affair that had been going on for years. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. How could Leonard do this to me, to our family? I had given him everything, sacrificed my own dreams and desires to be the perfect wife and mother. And this was how he repaid me? I confronted Leonard that night, my voice shaking with anger and betrayal. How could you do this, Leonard? How could you throw away everything we've built together for some cheap fling? He looked at me with cold, unfeeling eyes. You're one to talk, Carolyn. You haven't been fulfilling your wifely duties for years. What did you expect me to do, just sit around and wait for you to come to your senses? I recoiled as if he had slapped me. Wifely duties? Is that all I am to you, Leonard? A servant, a plaything to be used and discarded at your whim? He sneered, his face twisting with contempt. You're lucky I've put up with you for this long, Carolyn. Most men would have left you years ago. I felt a surge of rage course through my veins. Get out, Leonard. Get out of my house, and don't come back. He laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that made my skin crawl. Your house? You forget, Carolyn. Everything here belongs to me. The house, the money, the family. Without me, you're nothing. I stood my ground, my voice steady and resolute. I may be nothing to you, Leonard, but I'm everything to our children and grandchildren, and I won't let you destroy this family any longer. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking with sobs. How had it come to this? How had the man I once loved turned into such a monster? I spent the next few hours going through the letters and photographs, my heart breaking with each new revelation. Leonard had been carrying on this affair for years, sneaking off to meet his mistress whenever he had the chance. He had even bought her expensive gifts and taken her on lavish vacations, all while I was at home, struggling to keep our family together. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know where to turn. Evelyn would never believe me, and Leonard had made it clear that he would stop at nothing to keep his secrets hidden. As I sat there, lost in thought, the phone rang. It was Thomas, his voice filled with concern. Carolyn, are you all right? I heard shouting coming from your house earlier. I broke down, pouring out the whole sordid story. Thomas listened patiently, his voice calm and reassuring. Carolyn, you need to get out of there. Come stay with me for a while until we can figure out what to do next. I hesitated, not wanting to impose on him, but the thought of staying in that house, with all its painful memories and secrets, was too much to bear. Thank you, Thomas. I'll be over in a few minutes. I packed a small bag and headed out the door, my heart heavy but my mind clear. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with Thomas by my side, I felt like I could face anything. And I was determined to make Leonard pay for what he had done, no matter what it took. Staying with Thomas was a breath of fresh air. His home was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, oppressive atmosphere I had grown accustomed to. Thomas was a gracious host, always making sure I had everything I needed and offering a listening ear whenever I needed to talk. Over the next few days, I gathered all the evidence I had of Leonard's affair, including the photographs and letters I had found. I reached out to friends and family, telling them the truth about what had been going on behind closed doors. To my surprise, many of them had suspected something was amiss for years, but had been too afraid to say anything. With their support and encouragement, I made the difficult decision to leave Leonard for good. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't continue to live a lie. I had to do what was best for myself and my family. I called my sister Diane, who lived nearby, and asked if I could stay with her for a while. She didn't hesitate for a second, insisting that I come over right away. Bring Oliver too, she said. He needs his grandmother now more than ever. I packed a few bags and picked up Oliver from school, my heart heavy but my mind clear. As we drove to Diane's house, I explained to Oliver that we would be staying with Aunt Diane for a while, until things settled down at home. He seemed confused but didn't ask too many questions, for which I was grateful. Diane welcomed us with open arms, her house a haven of peace and tranquility. She had always been the level-headed one in the family, the one who could see things clearly and offer practical advice. I knew I could count on her to help me through this difficult time. A few days later, I invited Leonard and Evelyn over to Diane's house, along with a few other close family members. I had something important to tell them, and I wanted to do it in person. When they arrived, Leonard looked annoyed and impatient, while Evelyn seemed suspicious and on edge. I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice steady and clear. "I know about the affair, Leonard," I said, holding up the photographs and letters. "I know about Anne, and I know how long this has been going on." Leonard's face turned white, while Evelyn gasped in shock. "What are you talking about, Carolyn?" she demanded. "This is absurd." I shook my head, my eyes never leaving Leonard's face. "It's the truth, Evelyn, and I have proof. Leonard has been lying to us for years, and I won't stand for it any longer." Leonard's face contorted with rage, and he lunged towards me, his hands outstretched. "You stupid, ungrateful bitch!" he snarled. "How dare you do this to me, after everything I've done for you?" But before he could reach me, Thomas stepped in front of him, his eyes blazing with anger. "That's enough, Leonard," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You will not lay a hand on Carolyn, not now, not ever." Leonard stepped back, his face twisted with hatred and disgust. "You're all against me," he spat. "My own family, turning on me like a pack of wolves." I stood my ground, my head held high. "We're not against you, Leonard. We're against the lies and the deceit. We're against the way you've treated me and this family for years, and we won't stand for it any longer." Evelyn looked stunned, her eyes darting back and forth between Leonard and me. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization that perhaps her precious son wasn't as perfect as she had always believed. "I'm leaving, Leonard," I said, my voice firm and resolute. "I'm taking Oliver, and we're starting a new life, away from you and your toxic behavior, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, my head held high, and my heart filled with a newfound sense of strength and determination. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive and in control of my own destiny. News of my confrontation with Leonard and Evelyn spread like wildfire through our small town. Everywhere I went, I could feel the eyes of the community on me, some filled with pity, others with a newfound respect. It was as if they had always known that something was amiss in our family, but had been too polite to say anything. Leonard, on the other hand, was facing a very different kind of attention. Whispers followed him wherever he went, and he was met with cold stares and turned backs at every turn. His once thriving business began to suffer as clients pulled away, unwilling to be associated with a man who had betrayed his wife so publicly. I watched from a distance as Leonard struggled to maintain his composure, his carefully crafted facade crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction in seeing him suffer, but another part of me couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. After all, he was still the father of my children, and I had once loved him deeply. Evelyn, surprisingly, took a different approach. She began to reach out to me, inviting me to tea and offering to help with Oliver. At first, I was suspicious of her motives, wondering if she was simply trying to save face in the wake of the scandal. But as time went on, I began to see a different side of her, one that was more vulnerable and genuine than I had ever seen before. "Carolyn, I know I haven't always been the easiest person to get along with," she said one afternoon as we sat in her living room. "But I want you to know that I deeply regret the way I've treated you over the years. I was so focused on protecting Leonard that I failed to see the pain he was causing you." I was taken aback by her words, unsure of how to respond. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said finally. "That means a lot to me." She reached out and took my hand, her eyes filled with tears. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be there for you and Oliver in any way I can. Please, let me help you." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. As the weeks went by, I found myself growing stronger and more independent. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping other women who had been through similar experiences. It was a way for me to give back to the community that had supported me through my darkest times, and it gave me a sense of purpose that I had been missing for so long. One day, as I was leaving the shelter, I ran into Anne, Leonard's former mistress. She looked tired and worn, her eyes filled with a deep sadness that I recognized all too well. Carolyn, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I never meant to hurt you or your family. I didn't know Leonard was married when we first started seeing each other, and by the time I found out, it was too late. I looked at her, feeling a strange sense of kinship. We were both victims of Leonard's lies and deceit, and we had both suffered greatly because of it. I forgive you, Anne, I said, my voice steady and clear. We were both fooled by Leonard, and we both deserve better than what he gave us. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Carolyn. That means more to me than you know. As I walked away, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my demons and come out stronger on the other side. I knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them head-on, with the support of my family and friends by my side. And as for Leonard, well, he would have to face the consequences of his actions, just as I had. But for now, I was focused on building a new life for myself and Oliver, one that was filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. Just when I thought I had uncovered all the secrets in my family, Thomas dropped a bombshell that left me reeling. We were sitting in his living room, enjoying a quiet cup of tea, when he suddenly cleared his throat and looked at me with a serious expression. Carolyn, there's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. It's about Evelyn, and why she's been so hard on you all these years. I set my cup down, my heart racing with anticipation. What is it, Thomas? What do you know? He sighed, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. Many years ago, when Leonard was just a boy, Evelyn had an affair. It nearly destroyed our marriage, and it's haunted her ever since. I gasped, my mind spinning with the implications of his words. Evelyn, the woman who had always been so quick to judge me, had been hiding her own infidelity all along. She's been projecting her own guilt onto you, Carolyn, Thomas continued. She sees herself in you, and it terrifies her. That's why she's been so overbearing, so critical of your every move. I sat back in my chair, stunned by the revelation. Suddenly, everything made sense. Evelyn's constant meddling, her unwavering support of Leonard, even in the face of his own betrayal. She had been trying to atone for her own sins, and I had been caught in the crossfire. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront Evelyn, to force her to face the truth about herself and the damage she had caused. I thanked Thomas for his honesty and set off for Evelyn's house, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. When I arrived, Evelyn was sitting in her living room, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked up at me, her face etched with guilt and shame. I know why you're here, Carolyn, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas told you about my affair, didn't he? I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. Why, Evelyn? Why did you do it? And why did you take it out on me all these years? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I was young and foolish, Carolyn. I made a mistake, and I've been paying for it ever since. When I saw you so happy and in love with Leonard, it reminded me of everything I had lost. I couldn't bear it. I felt a wave of empathy wash over me, mixed with a deep sense of anger and betrayal. But why protect Leonard, Evelyn? Why enable his own infidelity when you knew firsthand how much it could hurt? She looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate plea for forgiveness. I thought I was doing the right thing, Carolyn. I thought I was protecting my family, just like I had tried to do all those years ago. But I see now that I was wrong. I was only hurting you and myself in the process. I sat down beside her, my heart heavy with the weight of her confession. I forgive you, Evelyn, I said, my voice steady and clear. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to be honest with yourself and with our family. No more secrets, no more lies. We deserve better than that. She nodded, her face a mask of relief and gratitude. I promise, Carolyn. From now on, I'll do everything in my power to make things right, starting with being there for you and Oliver, in whatever way you need me. I hugged her then, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. The secrets that had haunted our family for so long were finally out in the open, and we could begin to heal. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew that with the support of my loved ones, I could face anything. As I left Evelyn's house that day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. I had uncovered the truth, and in doing so, I had taken back control of my own life. And I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with my head held high and my heart full of hope for the future. In the weeks following my confrontation with Evelyn, I watched as Leonard's world crumbled around him. His once thriving business had all but collapsed, and his reputation in the community was in tatters. Everywhere he went, he was met with cold stares and whispered accusations, the weight of his actions finally catching up to him. I knew I should have felt a sense of satisfaction, seeing him suffer the consequences of his betrayal, but instead I felt a deep sense of sadness and regret. Despite everything he had done, Leonard was still the father of my children, and a part of me would always love him. One evening, as I sat in Diane's living room, watching Oliver play with his toys, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Leonard standing there, his face haggard and his eyes filled with despair. "Carolyn, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, can I come in?" I hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, allowing him to enter. We sat down at the kitchen table, an uncomfortable silence hanging between us. "I'm leaving town," Leonard said finally, his eyes fixed on the table. "I've lost everything, my business, my reputation, my family. There's nothing left for me here." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness wash over me. "I understand, Leonard. I think it's for the best." He looked up at me then, his eyes filled with a deep regret. "I'm sorry, Carolyn, for everything. I know I can never make it right, but I want you to know that I truly am sorry." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back, determined to stay strong. "I know, Leonard, but sometimes sorry isn't enough." He nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I know. I just hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." With that, he stood up and walked out the door, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I knew that forgiveness would come in time, but for now, I had to focus on rebuilding my life and creating a better future for myself and Oliver. A few days later, I found the perfect little cottage just a few blocks away from Diane's house. It was small and cozy, with a little garden out back where Oliver could play. As I signed the lease and started packing up my things, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation wash over me. This was a new beginning, a chance to start fresh and create the life I had always dreamed of. Evelyn and Thomas were there to help me move in, their faces filled with a newfound warmth and affection. Evelyn had been true to her word, making a genuine effort to be more supportive and understanding. She even offered to watch Oliver while I unpacked, giving me a much-needed break. As I sat in my new living room, surrounded by boxes and the smell of fresh paint, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had been through so much in the past few months. The betrayal, the anger, the pain. But I had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. I knew that there would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and uncertainty. But I also knew that I had the love and support of my family and the strength within myself to overcome anything that came my way. As the sun began to set outside my window, casting a warm glow over the room, I smiled to myself, feeling a sense of hope and possibility that I hadn't felt in years. This was my new beginning, my chance to create the life I had always wanted, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms.